It was the most common high school math class. But the main character, schoolgirl Jolie, it seems, was not at all to study. The girl was looking at her classmate, a guy named Nate. He changed his hairstyle, to which she paid attention. The appearance of the classmate was really beautiful. White skin like an aristocrat and harmonious eyes, nose, and mouth. In the first place, it seemed to the girl that the atmosphere around him was not that of others. I think it's because of his calm and reserved character. Even though Nate was relegated to ambiguous times, he quickly became a prince. The teacher noticed that the boy was not concentrating well in class, so the man asked him to go to the blackboard and solve the problem, to which the student replied that it was very difficult. "What's difficult since you transferred here from Seoul?" the teacher asked in an angry tone. After the newcomer was unable to solve the problem, Jolie was called to the blackboard. The girl solved the complex equation without any problems, for which she received praise from the teacher. "Well, good job. It seemed like you had your head in the clouds, as expected of the first student in the class," said the mathematician. The girl was the top student not only in the class, but also in the school, although her institution seemed to her as something snotty and at a low level. After the schoolgirl returned back to her seat, the teacher admonished the slightly behind in the program to the boy. "Nate, you should put in more effort, even if it is some girl. Aren't you ashamed to lose to her?" said the man not very competently. The class was coming to an end, so one of the students decided to remind him about it because he wanted to go to the toilet very badly. "Teacher, class is over," the boy said to the whole class. "Hey, Bob, the teacher decides when to end the lesson," replied the formidable teacher. But that didn't stop the kid from expressing his thoughts for a second. Bob started telling him that he wanted to go to the restroom, and if they wouldn't let him go, the student would do it right there. At recess between classes, a newcomer, Nate, approached the top student. "Jolie, I'm really sorry. I'm the reason you had to get out," the guy said in a sad tone. "Get out of the way. Get out of the way. I want to use the restroom. You're blocking the way." That's what the pretty boy got in return. After the girl decided to go out, the guy was approached by another classmate who also decided to complain about the quiet girl. "A bad temper, isn't it?" she said. This bully advised a classmate not to socialize with Jolie. It wasn't surprising either. "Everything is dirty. The things I'm wearing are old and worn out," the poor girl thought to herself. "Even though there are people like me, I'm the worst. However, he is completely different," thought the girl regarding the new student. When the sun goes down, it gets dark quickly in the mountains. Jolie went up there every day after school, and there was a good reason for that. "Unfortunately, my home is not a suitable environment for studying. I could have stayed at school, but it's not the same there either," the schoolgirl thought sadly. "If they see me and want to bully me, I don't want to get in too much trouble," she decided for herself. Then the protagonist accidentally found an extraordinary place. It's an old house that looks like a warehouse. She found it while walking when her drunken mother slapped her in the face. It was so quiet here, like a temple, since there are mountains here. It was cool in the evening since it is the beginning of summer. It was a place to focus on studying, so it was a great find for Jolie. The furniture inside, if she thought so, and not too old. But it was clear that someone had lived there not too long ago. But that didn't matter to her at all anymore. It was empty, and that was all that mattered. In fact, there's another person who knows about the house. It was the same classmate who had earlier asked to use the restroom in class, Bob. In high school? No, the worst guy in our neighborhood. That's what the girl thought he was. When she came to study, Bob was otherwise only sleeping. "Doesn't look like you've only come in now. Been sleeping all this time?" Without an ounce of surprise, the girl asked. He offered the student a delicious soup that he decided to make himself. "Should I add an egg or not?" Bob decided to ask in order to please the girl. As was evident, this abandoned house is the one they use together. I've known who he is for a long time. The fact that he came here when he was in middle school after losing his parents as a child and moving constantly from one relative's house to another. Jolie knew. Rumor has it that he was forced to transfer because he beat up a teacher at his old school. Someone said they had a family of gangsters and he used to beat up his parents. "And I heard he beats people up every night," the gossip said. The rumors were terrible. Even though the guys were in the same class, they never interact with each other. Bob just sits behind the girl. And Jolie thought that's how it would be for the rest of high school. But the girl really liked this house. It was a wonderful place where she could concentrate and solve her lessons in peace. It had been about a week since the student found the house by chance and started visiting. Jolie went there every night and solved her lessons. Everything was very peaceful, but only until she saw Bob on the bed located on the second floor. "And sorry, I didn't realize the house was yours. There was no lock, so I thought it was empty. I was just leaving," informed the girl, nervously gathering her things. But Jolie didn't realize what was going on at all. "It's Bob! Since when has he been here? And why does this house belong to him? We have to get out of here fast!" Pondering quietly, she continued to pack up the place. "It's not my house. It's been empty for a month. Nobody lives here." The guy reassured the girl, after which Jolie wanted to know what he was doing here. "Sleeping. Come to study. I'm going to sleep, so you can go ahead," replied the bean, and decided to go up to his second floor. The classmate silently went upstairs and lay down on the bed. It was very quiet around him. He's just going to take off like that and fall asleep? At a moment like this? The girl was very surprised at this turn of events. The protagonist decided that it would be right for her to leave. But now she didn't understand what she should do. However, there's no better place to study than this. The schoolgirl reasoned objectively. "But Bob isn't the homeowner. He's the one who found the house before I did. Can the bad guy have title to it?" The quiet girl didn't understand. The silent girl decided to go up to the second floor to the sleeping guy without any explanation. Due to her clumsiness, she sharply hit her head on the ceiling, which was a couple of centimeters away from her head. The girl seemed to have completely forgotten that she was a high bed. Jolie involuntarily wanted to leave, but then Bob held her hand and pulled her to him. The girl was very close to the guy, so close that she could feel his breath on the back of her neck. "Didn't you notice when you went up? The ceiling here is very low. Be careful," he said with a drop of concern in his words. Abruptly, in a moment, Jolie realized that right now her thighs were touching her classmate's thighs. The girl pushed herself out of Bob's embrace with all her might. She was embarrassed. The boy knew she had come here to study. He had seen something like this already yesterday. "That's when I woke up and saw someone sitting at the table, and it was the back of your head, and then I went back to sleep." He shared. Bob easily recognized the girl from the back. "I'm sitting behind you. One behind you, actually," he explained, and though it was strange in Jolie's opinion, it was a logical explanation. "If your target was a bed, I'd kick you out. But it looks like it's a desk, so I just left it and figured I could keep it that way." Narrated a classmate. "We both need a quiet place. We have different desires, so we won't get in each other's way," Bob decided, to which she agreed in principle. Even though the guy could have just slept at home, Jolie realized he didn't just come here out of boredom. So he has his own circumstances, too. She reasoned. Now the new owners of the house decided that they should somehow secure the entrance. "Are you sure people like me won't show up again? We'll have to put a lock on it. I'll bring it next time. I'll share it with you, too," the student decided. After a classmate handed the girl a key, Jolie went down to her area. Bob understood who Jolie was, first in school. But the girl reported that her academic performance did not mean that she was a bad judge of character, although others might not have believed it. But nothing could be done now. She had no other options now. That's how the coexistence of the school's best student Jolie and the usual bully high school student Bob began. And now they live without much trouble, sharing each other's zones. Bob just sleeps on the second floor, and Jolie studies on the first floor. Personally, the guys are fine with it. But even as they befriended him in the house, the relationship at school remained the same, even though they didn't pretend to know each other. For one thing, the school children simply did not talk. Of course, they don't socialize much at home either, but the guy kindly cooks dinner for the girl every night. I wonder if we can just talk after Bob brings the soup and boils it, a classmate wondered. But eating a dish like that every day is bad. Anyway, you can't worry. He doesn't seem like a bad guy. Relieved, she analyzed and decided the first student of the school. That night it was business as usual. They argued a bit amongst themselves about the flavor of the soup and how many eggs were better to put in. The yolks are mixed in, aren't they? Though 2 of them don't, but 3 of them do. I don't like soup when it's like this, the girl said fastidiously. They're boiled in the same pot. You can't match our tastes at the same time. Eat if you want. The tall guy continued to argue. When the dish was ready, the guys sat down at the table to enjoy the resulting dish. But the girl's roommate accidentally got soup broth on her t-shirt. I was thinking of wearing it for another day. Him. If only my fists were bigger by just a little bit. Angered the girl. Then Bob set his plate aside and ordered the girl to take off her shirt. As strange as it may sound, the classmate wanted to help Jolie. At that point, the bully took off his t-shirt to hand it to the girl. Carry her for a while. I got you dirty, Bob declared, handing his friend his own thing. The girl really didn't know if it was necessary. However, laundry is such a chore. Only cold water flows in the morning and evening. If I could make this chore easier on myself. She thought it over. The roommate left the room for her to change her clothes. A couple minutes later, the girl appeared in front of him, already standing in someone else's clothes. She handed the dirty underwear to the guy. In turn, Bob ordered her to stay where she was and not to go anywhere. In the meantime, he went to launder the stain. It was funny for Jolie to see him like that. Now that I look at him like that, he seems really good. Not even any tattoos on his back. That's a lot different from the first impression, isn't it? Without noticing it herself, Jolie casually grabbed the edge of her t-shirt and brought it right up to her nose. Bob turned around and noticed this action. What are you doing? The guy asked, surprised. The girl pretended that the soup was very spicy, so she just waved her hand in front of her nose, ostensibly to lower the fiery sensation in her mouth. In reality, the schoolgirl was very uncomfortable. After a delicious lunch, Jolie sat down to do her homework. When she accomplished everything, the girl started to get ready to go home. That's when the guy got out of his favorite crib on the second floor. At first, I considered telling him I was leaving. Every time he wakes up at just the right moment. One of these days, Bob decided to offer to walk the schoolgirl home. It was already quite dark outside, but Jolie refused, on the pretext that she had her own flashlight. What color do you think the flashlight is at night? The guy asked, and kept insisting on walking her out. Then he silently reached into his locker and pulled out a large, long stick. The girl was already scared since the bully is known for violent incidents, but the guy was only concerned for Jolie's safety. Hold on, explore after me, said the roommate, extending the stick right into the girl's hands. That's exactly what happened. Thus they walked together to the schoolgirl's house. Back then, I didn't know yet that this would happen every time. The protagonist commented, using a stick to do that. I think I keep seeing the other side of the rumors, pondered Jolie. As they walked home together, the girl noticed that her friend looked like a cat. I'll call you that. Cats have good night vision. Their pupils are wide open so they can see well in low light, she said jokingly. Also, on the way out, the girl decided to ask him how much he slept. I was just thinking, how am I going to get home at night if you don't show up one day? Explained the girl, to which the guy replied to her that she should go home before the sun sets. They reached Jolie's apartment quietly. The student wanted to say thank you, but Bob silently disappeared from sight without even saying goodbye. She didn't have time to open her mouth. Every time she went home, she realized why she was so reluctant to go back there again. It was easy to guess from the empty bottles by the front door that her mother had been drinking again today. The girl opened the door, hoping that her mother had already fallen asleep. But then that hateful, skinny face appeared in front of her. The mother was drunk again, and that day decided to pour a bowl of cold water directly on her daughter. Jolie stood there soaking wet. The girl wondered why she hadn't come back a little later today. The next day was gym class at school. Walking through the stadium, Jolie was accosted by that nasty girl, the bully of the class. "Oh, sorry, didn't see it. My mistake," she said, laughing defiantly. It was clear it was all on purpose. The smart girl didn't want to restrain herself any longer and showed a not-so-nice gesture right in the bully's face. If it were a normal day, then Jolie would not get in her way. But today, the protagonist is not feeling well. Looks like the problem was caused by being outside yesterday with a wet body. Apparently the girl got sick. Already in class, when the whole class was playing volleyball, Jolie began to notice that something was going wrong. The ball that was so fortunately close to her hands was constantly being snatched away by other players, preventing her from making a shot. Are they doing this on purpose now? They want to make me a pariah in the game? Ha, are they serious? Realized the girl. I'd rather just get knocked out, a schoolgirl guessed. At some point, the student realized that her condition was getting worse and worse. I can't. I'll just say I need to go to the nurse's station and leave, Jolie decided. But no sooner had she taken a step than a ball flew right at her. A few seconds later, the poor girl was on the floor. When she opened her eyes, she was already in the hospital. Then the girl realized that she had finally lost consciousness. It was a hospital room, so it was also very hot. The nurse who entered the hospital room also felt very warm. Who put a heater in here, even in the middle of summer? It was no wonder why it was so hot. The doctor decided to touch the girl's forehead to find out her temperature. The doctor decided to touch the girl's forehead to check her temperature. The fever is so bad, I don't even know if it's the flu or another illness. Why, if you're so sick, didn't you excuse yourself from gym class? Asked the nurse to scold the child a little. Finally, the doctor advised the schoolgirl to rest at home for a while. At that moment, the girl heard a familiar voice in the hospital corridor. "Is there anyone at school who would visit me?" She didn't understand. Jolie assumed it was her roommate, Bob. But then a newcomer abruptly appeared. Nate announced that he had come to inquire about a classmate's condition. "I've come during other breaks, but you were still asleep then," the boy confessed. "I was worried, thinking you might have to go to the hospital. It's the first time I've ever seen someone pass out." And sincerely said the guy. He had originally thought that the girl had fainted because of him, but she had only just passed out just from the pain in her body. "Well, we need to change the situation," the schoolgirl decided. "What did you come to see after you threw the ball with all your might? Did you want to see me hurt?" Jolie wanted to say, just to mess with the guy a little. "You haven't been feeling well since you came to school today. I was worried when we played dodgeball. They were chasing the ball like they were aiming to hit you on purpose. I thought it would be better if you got knocked out and rested," the young lad admitted. He must have used more force than expected, which caused her to pass out. The guy admitted he was sorry. "How can a person be so honest? Here it would be very difficult for me to apologize or thank," the girl thought at that moment. "However, his world must be different from mine in warmth. You're never bothered by people who might be harmful," reasoned Jolie. "It's okay. I don't think any bones are broken. The bruises will go away soon." The sick girl comforted the guy. That's when the schoolgirl found out that it was Nate who had put a heater in the room. But in any case, she was grateful to him. The girl got up from the bed and decided to head for the hallway, but after taking one step, her eyes went dark. That's when the guy immediately caught up and took her hand. "Don't make any sudden movements." Carefully, he advised. At this minute, the door in the room opened. It's Jolie's roommate came to support the girl. There was an awkward silence. To break the tension, Nate decided to say something. "Bob, Do you have a pain somewhere too? The doctor's not here right now," pointed out the right guy. The girl herself didn't understand why he had come to the nurse's station. Jolie couldn't believe that Bob could be worried about her, but the bully didn't stay in the room for long. Bob only opened the pill cabinet and took a packet of pills, then left the room. Nate immediately exhaled a sigh of relief. "I'm a little uncomfortable around Bob," the classmate admitted. The girl, however, continued to think of her own. "It's not just you. Why did he take the medicine? Is he sick? I'll ask him when I see him." She decided and headed for the exit. Nate, like a true gentleman, offered to walk her home. But in turn, she said she'd rather not. "I'm already fine. You don't have to worry," calmed the guy's schoolgirl. Although, in fact, the girl just did not want anyone to know about her situation at home. Jolie headed for her signature spot. Upon arrival, she noticed that the lock was untouched. "It doesn't look like Bob came here," noticed the girl, and with a sad mood she walked into the house. She had no strength at all, but in spite of her condition, the excellent student thought that she should study. The more so because she had only a short time left before the exam. Perhaps it has to do with my own stubbornness, but until I finish my studies, I don't want to give up my first place to anyone, because it's a reward and a title that I proudly earned through my abilities. The girl thought. Still, she couldn't afford to lose him, especially at a school like this. Even so, she kept looking toward the bed on the second floor. Maybe it's because I'm tired, but the urge to sleep is constantly keeping me awake. It feels like a slight fever is coming back. I think if I get some sleep, I'll feel better. The girl decided, but kept contradicting herself to concentrate. Still, Jolie couldn't take it anymore and decided to get some sleep. Rest is important too. As she fell asleep, she kept thinking about recent events, thinking about the handsome classmate and the recent situation with Bob. "He's not going to kill me for venturing into his territory, is he? And when I almost fell over, he showed up and made me embarrassed?" Jolie scrolled through her head. What did he think when he saw me with Nate standing next to me? From the look on his face, he didn't look surprised or like he was trying to tease me. But Bob isn't the kind of person whose emotions can be read by facial expressions. Why do I feel like he's coming right now? If he does, will he wake me up? The girl continued to speculate, and soon, before she knew it, she was asleep. Jolie was startled by someone's shadow blocking her light. When she opened her eyes, she saw an incomprehensible, fearful force from the guy in front of her. The girl decided to try to charge her fists right at the silhouette's face, but then someone squeezed her hands hard. When she finally woke up, she realized that her roommate was standing in front of her. She threw the guy off of her with a yell, causing him to bang his head against the wall. "Why are you standing over me?" she shrieked fearfully. But the bully also began to sarcasm to the girl. "How do I know it was you? I thought someone broke in here. I forgot. Are you crazy? What are you doing here? Do you know what time it is?" Swearing shouted back at the guy. "It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You didn't sit up until this hour usually, and the door was unlocked. You slept with the door open? Are you out of your mind?" Bob scolded her like a little sister. As a result of the argument, Bob voiced his misunderstandings about why the girl doesn't sleep at home, whereupon Jolie turned the cards over to him. "Why aren't you at home yourself? Why come here at this hour and make a fuss? At 2 o'clock in the morning?" She continued. Then the guy mentioned that the second floor wasn't her territory after all. The girl only continued to shout in response. "What's wrong with you? You're taking over my territory? I only used it because you weren't here. My head hurts to death. My whole body aches. Of course I was sleepy, so I decided to get some rest. I apologize. I've committed a terrible sin." The schoolgirl sarcastically continued to justify herself, so Bob decided to just leave and let her use the bed for her own pleasure and just let the girl calm down. But still, he knew she'd fainted from the ball. At some point, the guy realized that leaving the sick girl here alone was a stupid thing to do. Jolie also noticed the worry. Was he worried? Thought he was going to laugh at me for sleeping for so long, pronounced the student to herself. After he quizzed her about what was hurting her, the roommate silently went downstairs. As he walked up the stairs, Jolie wondered how he could see anything at all in the dark. He must really have cat vision. How can you get down so well? I can't see anything at all, thought the protagonist. When he was on the first floor, the girl shouted her thoughts to him. From now on, turn on the lights if you go up the stairs. If you fall down the stairs, you will die instantly. With worry, the girl ordered, though he didn't take it seriously as she was too fragile to say such a thing to him. Bob went downstairs to open the very medicine that was given earlier in the hospital. The girl decided to go down to the first floor as well, but her classmate wouldn't let her do so. "Don't. I'll do it myself," he said courageously. When he handed her the pill, the girl inquired where the guy got them from. Bob admitted that he had menstrual cramps. Jolie laughed. "Ha ha 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 ha! Our Bob is having menstrual cramps. If only I had a close friend I could tell. Ha 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 ha!" She continued to laugh, to which the classmate replied that she should only be proud of it. "Won't it make a fuss in your house?" "You didn't go there, even though it's so late," interrupted Bob's laughing friend. Then Jolie informed him that she could just stay here for the night. But that message the guy wasn't too happy about. "Get off. The bed is mine," the roommate declared. The girl kept assuring him that Bob shouldn't sleep so much, since he wasn't doing anything at school, but that didn't help in gaining sleeping rights. "And this kind of thing is being said to me by someone who has slept all day? Stop picking on me and go home. I'll walk you there," Picky promised Bob. Stubborn Jolie proved that she was going to stay here that night. Then the guy decided to leave, but the student didn't want to be alone. "Then you stay too. I'm not saying we should sleep together," the modest girl said in a quiet voice. "Didn't we make an unspoken agreement about why each of us needs a home? He's your place of study," Bob pointed out menacingly. But in that moment, the girl admitted that it's the only place she can rest. "I never thought I'd end up saying something like that to another person, but I guess it's okay if it's you who I share space with," the schoolgirl confessed, and talked about how she can't go home. "I guess it's okay to share information. Your reason for being here right now might be the same as mine," the girl said to herself, thinking about what she had just said. After such an admission, Bob only went downstairs in silence. The guy had to sleep at a desk that night. Jolie then actually stayed up sleeping in the comfort of the second floor of the house. "It's a strange place, but it's cozy. The dawn is dark, but I'm not afraid because Bob is downstairs. Since when has his presence been a relief rather than a danger?" pondered the girl before going to bed. The girl had passed out earlier, so she didn't notice that the whole bed smelled slightly of Bob. Mild, but refreshing. Although his temper, he probably doesn't use cologne, thought Jolie. But that smell was quite pleasant before her. Anyway, the bully is really different from how he looks. The girl would even say he's much better. The next morning, Jolie woke up in a great mood. "How long has it been since I last slept so soundly? My fever has gone down and I don't feel any pain. It's a refreshing morning." The schoolgirl was overjoyed to finally be so pleasantly rested. Looking at the first floor, the student noticed that her roommate was making his signature soup as usual. She went down to have breakfast with him. When Jolie saw the composition of his dish, the girl scolded the guy again for making broth with egg. But the breakfast was still delicious, for which Jolie was actually very grateful to her friend. Near the sink, where the guy was washing dishes, was his towel. The schoolgirl decided to use it since she was planning to take a shower anyway, and Bob himself was not against it. He even advised the girl to first heat the water and then only use it. At this time, the guy decided to get some sleep. Well, his jokes were not without merit. "How am I supposed to sleep in there? You're all sweaty, aren't you?" he said, concluding why she decided to take a shower. A couple of hours later, the protagonist was already at school. On the way there, Jolie accidentally met the very bullies of the class. "Are you okay yet? You look so good, it's disappointing." Tried to pick on one of the high school girls. "Are you pleased yourself? I had no idea you'd resort to such sneaky tactics. Your fake fainting makes me laugh, just to get the attention of a handsome man named Nate," the girl declared. Then the quiet girl asked if she thought she wanted his attention for some reason. The bully only tried to prove that they had already figured it all out for themselves and had known for a long time that Jolie supposedly liked Nate. "You're always looking at him. Didn't you decide to use a different tactic since the first one didn't work? Embarrassed about being exposed?" That girl continued yapping. "Yeah? Love him? There's no such thing. I only looked at him because he was different. Because he was different from me," Jolie thought to herself. The nasty classmate stepped closer to the quiet girl. She touched her nasty finger to Jolie and said something provocative. "Well, I realize it's hard for you to be honest. After all, it's not your fault your mom is like this. Don't worry. I'm good at keeping secrets, but sometimes you still can't help yourself," said the bastard. After saying that, the handsome Nate himself crept up unnoticed from behind. He immediately said hello to his classmates. The guy came closer to Jolie to ask about her well-being, but the girl reminded that he should not worry about it, because everything is already normal. On the way to school, Jolie also met her roommate Bob, but they only looked at each other without saying a word. Their relationship at school remained the same. Nothing. Sitting in class, the first student of the school was thinking about not studying at all, but about the last words of her classmate. "Does Helen know about my mother?" The girl couldn't realize. Jolie and her mom always lived just the two of them. In addition, the protagonist did not know her very well. The girl had no idea where and why so much pain was in her. "The only thing I'm sure of, to endure this pain, she's taking it out on me. I remember as a child, I tried to talk to her. There were times when I was worried because she didn't go to work regularly despite being sick," a high school student recalled. "But all worries faded away after she came back drunk. Gradually, I cared less and less as I cleaned up her urine off the floor." Jolie struggled to admit. They were poor, but after all, not all the poor are broken by their situation. "Mother's wound is very old and deep. I guessed that it was eating away at her body and mind. Of course, this conjecture brought me no comfort," pondered the unhappy child. "Not long ago, my mom often left money in the corner of the room. They stayed there for a few days, so she asked if I could take it." As usual, her mother didn't answer that day, so the girl took them without asking. She used that amount to buy used books. Her mother never retaliated against her for them. After that, the money she left behind became Jolie's pockets, and the girl did not try to find out how it was earned. "You have to try harder than you do now. Since you were born into such a family, you should do at least twice as much as the others. No matter the situation, it should have raised me to be less pathetic." Jolie thought only of those words. A teacher approached the scheming girl. He cracked her lightly on the head with a folded piece of paper. "Hey, stop dangling your head in the clouds. You think because you have good grades, you can sit around doing nothing? Am I a joke to you? Since your grades are good, shouldn't you study harder by listening to me?" The educator pressured her. "Oh yeah, why would you want to do that? You're going to go to college in Seoul anyway, right? Is that why you're ignoring people from our neighborhood?" The mathematician pouted again. He was a perverted bastard who had no right to be a teacher. "I kept rejecting his offer to join the math club. After that, he starts bullying me every time he sees me in any way possible," explained the protagonist. "He has obvious intentions. I'm not yet crazy enough to accept such an offer. He's a scumbag for harassing female students whenever he gets the chance." The girl continued to not listen to him. "I'm talking to you, if anything. When adults talk, you're supposed to listen obediently, assuming that everything we've said is right." He continued to rub it in. All Jolie could think about at that moment was making the man die. Then the handsome boy of the class stood up for her. Nate told her that yesterday, because of him and not feeling well, the girl had fainted. So I guess the blame for her not being able to concentrate is on me. The boyfriend went on to defend her, but the professor himself didn't see it as the newcomer's fault. And why is it your fault? Is she so crazy about you that she has a love sickness? Did she not sleep last night? The old man spoke out unkindly. At that moment, a couple of centimeters away from the teacher, a basketball flew at full speed straight into the blackboard. It was thrown by the so-called bully of the class. That underdog threw the ball at her with such force. Shouldn't have done that. The same goes for the others. Jolie was defended by her secret roommate, to which the teacher only replied that these students should think about it and write an explanatory note today. Helen asked the newcomer why he'd done it. He wouldn't have said anything and could have just walked away. But Nate had defended the girl because he thought it was his fault. She told me it was okay. And not to worry more? Pondered the boy and looked at the suffering girl. But Nate realized perfectly well to himself that he was initially worried about her. A couple minutes passed. Jolie noticed that Bob had already gotten up from under his desk. The girl thought he was done, but then noticed that the kid's sheet was completely blank. Well, if he gives that blank slip to the math teacher, I don't think the math teacher will just let him go, pondered Jolie, more likely to charge that he broke school rules and probably punish in some other way. In the opinion of many, the mathematician is a very good and fair man. Good, she realized. I didn't know Bob was the kind of person who would react to the words of outsiders. The guy was opening up to her more and more every day. In a way, it's only natural for them to have doubts. This is the second time Bob, who only slept through high school, has intervened in the protagonist's problems. This time he did it in a very direct way. I love the current relationship with Bob, a friendship between two people that no one knows about. That was what the girl was missing. If someone was around, there's no way he'd joke about it. So if our relationship is going to break down, it's only going to be because of me, Jolie decided. Jolie decided to catch up with her friend in the hallway to take the letter of explanation from him. Otherwise, the mathematician would claw at the boy. But Bob only yanked his hand away. It was all from the outside that Helen saw. The classmate immediately started laughing. I think Jolie is only pretending to be friendly. The look on Bob's face is so intimidating, whispered the bully in her girlfriend's ear. Nate also approached the boys to show his help. Bob, if you don't know how to write, we'll give you a hint, said the guy. But it didn't seem to interest Jolie's roommate at all. He merely turned around and walked away. Don't think I'm a connoisseur either. I can't write mine either. The student confessed to the girl. I didn't ask him to stick up for me, but still my fault in this too, thought the girl. At that moment, Jolie decided to support the guy and also help him. Misunderstanding a teacher I respect hurts me. I sincerely regret the act I committed. If a teacher who has an open heart will allow me to correct myself, I will always think before I speak and try to become a model student. Share what the schoolgirl wrote about. Perhaps it smacked of sarcasm, but they had no other choice. At one point, Jolie decided she should distance herself from her classmate. I envy the prostate who reigns next to you, where no one bothers you, thought the high school student as she looked at him. Even if you don't do anything, you think you won't find someone who won't be comfortable around you. The girl reasoned. As Nate stared at her like that, thoughts came into his head, and which jewels he didn't want to bother with. Torn school uniform, slippers, hair that's been washed in the sink, the smell of sweat that probably came from me. All of it. Just by your existence, you make me feel insecure. Jolie continued to think as she positioned herself next to this handsome man. Helen started pestering the smartest girl in the class again. What's your relationship with Bob? This time, the cheeky girl asked. But of course, Jolie did not even begin to answer this question, since the classmates should not care. After school, the high school girl decided to go to her favorite place as usual. On the way, she assumed that Bob was already at home. I should go and ask him why he reacted so coldly during the day, decided the girl. I can certainly guess the reason. He either wanted to keep our communication a secret, or he has a secret. The girl reasoned, but Jolie tried to push those musings from her head. I'm not going there just to learn. Bob comes second out of reasons of importance, and naturally studying comes first. There's not much time left before the exam. She continued to deny her thoughts about the boy. As she got closer to the house, she wondered if he might not be there. I won't be able to get down the mountain by myself. Will I have to sleep there again? Well, it's better than being at home with Mom. The girl also kept wondering what Helen knew about her mother. Although that dog hates me, it's not to the point of deliberately harming me. Jolie calmed herself. Could it be because of a handsome classmate? Being away from him will probably be fine. I guess I should ask my mom for once. What would be expected of her? Pondered the apprentice before entering the house. This time, the girl decided to scare Bob a little. She quietly crept up to the guy on the second floor to scare him. He must be in such shock that he'll hit his head on the ceiling. That's the price you'll pay for yanking my arms so mercilessly, mouthed the girl to herself. But things didn't turn out at all the way she had planned. As soon as he saw her, he immediately grabbed her by the neck. As soon as the roommate realized that his girlfriend was in front of him, he immediately began to apologize. The girl was only very frightened. I thought it was some strange type who entered even without knocking and with quiet steps. And why are you doing things you haven't done before? Making me nervous. He justified himself. After that, Bob decided to go down to the first floor to get a cup of water for Miss. I told you to walk with the lights on! The girl continued to yell. Bob handed the girl some water. The boys made up. At that moment, Jolie realized that he was a completely different person than in school. I guess I shouldn't worry about a fatal fall down the stairs. After all, I can die quicker from suffocation, said the girl jokingly, to keep the man feeling guilty. Their topic was abruptly changed by the guy asking about how good her friend's agility was. He was talking about today's ball. The guy also resented why he didn't know about it yet. It seems like you've slept in front of me more than once. At that moment, Bob admitted that he sometimes had nightmares. That was why he was here. But the classmate turned the subject back on her. Why did you come here again? Do you like studying so much? He asked, though the girl herself didn't realize where she got such a strong interest from. Well, but it's the only place I can do what I want, the quiet girl admitted. To avoid talking about an uncomfortable topic, Jolie decided to ask her friend about the explanatory paper. Do you know how strict the math teacher is? He won't just leave it alone, said the girl, on what Bob again attracted to the conversation of her classmate. Allegedly, Nate actively helped the girl. After Jolie did the required homework, her roommate walked the schoolgirl home that evening. I finished later than usual because I needed to memorize the accumulated English words. In the middle of the road, Bob noticed that the streetlights were out. The girl said it was a short distance home, so she could walk home on her own. Worried for no reason, so how sorry are you for strangling me? Jolie thought to herself. The road actually looked scary. And, well, since you're really worried, so be it. I'll let you escort me home, said the girl to show her pride. When they were almost there, the girl noticed her mom on the road. She immediately ran up to her. Why are you here? Let's go home. Trying to drive the woman back so she wouldn't embarrass her. But the angry mother didn't care at all. She swung with all her might at her child. The girl fell so hard that her Achilles heel began to hurt very badly. I didn't want anyone to see this. With pity, she thought. But Bob ran up to his friend at that very second to block her with his own body. He hugged the girl, protecting her from the sick woman. After a couple of minutes, Jolie asked Bob to step back. Then the brave girl went to her mother to grab her hand. The mother resented why Jolie had not come home for such a long time. Surely the atmosphere at home is suitable for learning. Shall I tell you when you started your home education? Otherwise, I have too many wonderful memories. Your rules were orders, etiquette mandatory. You don't explain the reason for your beatings. Don't pretend to be a normal mom, explained Jolie. The daughter was only disgusted by this. After saying this, she abruptly pulled her hand out and walked away in the direction of the house. Bob was left alone with the unpleasant woman. Then the guy decided to explain everything to her. There is nothing I can do if you still don't believe me. However, you have nothing to worry about. Jolie isn't doing anything wrong. Her head is full of nothing but studying. The guy confessed, but the woman just walked away silently. The next day at school, Jolie sat in a sad mood. The girl already wanted to transfer to another school. She even dreamed of simply disappearing from this world. Mom's seizures were familiar, but it happened at the exact moment Bob was around. Now the girl didn't want to cross paths with him now. However, since they are in the same class, it's impossible. I don't think it's possible to go to that house now. What to do? She didn't know. There was not much time left before the exam, but the girl didn't know how long she would have to avoid her roommate. She didn't notice herself writing too much for an explanatory letter. Jolie decided to give it up and go back. They won't accept it anyway. Pessimistically, she decided. As she passed Bob, the schoolgirl saw that he was asleep again. But along his neck, she also noticed a new scratch. It happened after a fight with her mother. When the girl walked into the teacher's office, she noticed a very beautiful woman. Wow, she's perfect from head to toe. A woman who is completely out of place in this backward neighborhood. I think I can sense who it is. Thought the high school girl. The mathematician noticed Jolie peeking out from under the door, so he invited the girl to meet the unknown lady. Oh, Jolie, you're just in time. Come over here. Come here, whispered the man. The teacher introduced Jolie as the best student in the school. He had been talking about her for a long time. For a country girl, she has quite a lot of brains, the man said jokingly to lighten the mood. The lady reported that she heard the girl faint after Nate hit her with the sword. Just as the high school girl thought, it really turned out to be the handsome boy's mother. There was nothing wrong with that. Still, I want to apologize. Are you okay? The lady went on to say, but Jolie was more surprised that her son had told the woman about it, and now she had even come to the school, even though the woman hadn't really expected anything from the institution. All she needed was for the children here to be healthy. At least that was what she said. My son has been studying in this institution since recently. That's also the reason why we want to build a gym, because this is my hometown. The woman informed both the teacher and the schoolgirl. So hopefully the teachers will be a little more lenient on issues related to children's health. When my son was in Seoul, he never wrote anything like an explanatory note, the aristocrat admitted. Now the woman reported that it now pained her to see Nate worrying about it. She thought that such useless worries only hindered her studies. All the lady's words were kindly confirmed by the teacher. It was evident that he was as scared as a subject who had received a warning from the king. Abruptly, the very culprit of the whole celebration, Nate, walked into the room. He was clearly unhappy that his mom was here, so the woman decided to call it a day. The teachers are probably busy, took up too much of your time. Enjoy your dinner without any worries. Consider it my sincerity, the woman informed, slowly sliding an envelope with a not insignificant amount of money across the table. After the prince's mother left, the other teachers discussed how shocked they were, and the girl was finally able to hand in her explanatory note. After Jolie walked out into the hallway, she was stopped by a classmate's mom. Nate, for some reason, decided at that very moment to introduce his mom to his classmate. The boy said that his mom said she had something to do at school, and that's why she was here. What kind of things do parents have to do at school? I came because my kid had an accident. She corrected her son defiantly sweetly. Then the girl mentioned the fact that the woman came because of the gym. Anyway, it's all for the kids. The woman managed to get out of it. Apparently, the high school girl had said too much. The The lady moved closer to Jolie to quietly voice her impressions of her. "Beautiful, and you look smart. Are you free on Saturday? Would you like to come over?" The woman asked unexpectedly. Jolie was surprised, after all. She doesn't get along that closely with her son. The woman began asking the girl what she liked to eat in order to make dinner. "It would be good to get together in the afternoon. Come up to Faith Church. You'll see the house. Shall I send a car if it's far?" she asked, but the student had to decline. After planning the meeting, the mother left the boys alone. "Sorry, my mom is a bit of a decision-maker herself," Nate said with a sad sigh. Jolie admitted that she can't come at her boyfriend for no reason. "Tell my mom I'm sorry," said the girl, to which she got the reply that she was invited and should go there. Before she could add anything, the guy gave a final message that they would see each other on Saturday and left. The girl still didn't fully understand what had even happened. This conversation was overheard by Helen's stupid bitch classmate. She was very angry because she didn't expect this turn of events. So why did she invite her? They told me they didn't know the details. Discussed the girl with her other girlfriends. At this time, Bob was also sitting in the study. Knowing Mother's temper, she shouldn't do something she might get flown in for again. Besides, she has quite an irritable temper herself. But in the end, she left it like that? Why? Jolie's roommate pondered. Her friend was sitting right in front of him, and it wasn't hard for the guy to notice that she was having a harder time concentrating today than usual. He thought it was because she had a lot on her mind, though he really liked the moments when Jolie was immersed in her studies. There's something special in the air of this moment. At least, that's what the guy thought. In an instant, the surroundings become quiet. It feels like everything is floating in the air and quietly sinking. Meanwhile, Jolie is haphazardly moving her pen and her eyes are shining. Plus, those sounds a girl's pen makes are special, because the only one that makes me not feel lonely. He pondered. The guy's life was very boring, and Jolie was the only one he found anything interesting. She was famous at school, yet not much was known about her. She stood out because she was good-looking and a good student. There was no one like her. Jolie seemed like someone who wanted to be alone, like an isolated island. And that must have been what awakened the others to think of her in a negative way. However, Bob had no other feelings for her than curiosity. In the same class as me. Sits in front of me. I spent a lot of time just looking at the back of her head, and even that was delightful. No matter how many times I fell asleep or woke up, she always sat upright. Bob admitted to himself. The boy didn't know if studying so well was really fun. Since he lived in a boring neighborhood, solving problems was like a game to him. Or maybe that was the thread she was holding on to. I've learned a lot of things just by looking at Jolie's back. One of them is that her gaze is often directed in the direction of a classmate of a handsome boy, pondered the local bully. Somehow that disappointed him then. He thought she had fallen in love with Prince Charming like the other girls. But looking at the cold expression on her face with which she looks at this favorite of everyone, oddly enough, made me laugh. He admitted, "And that was all there was until I met her in that house." That was when he first saw that look on her face. Watching her was interesting, and their relationship was still a secret. They both felt comfortable in that house, like normal high schoolers. But now Bob didn't know how to solve it. The reason she's avoiding me is because she showed me a side of herself that she's been desperately hiding. That kind of thing can't even be called shameful. It's not our fault we were born without knowing we had weird parents. Reasoned the guy in the last desk. The next day, Jolie had to go to her classmate's house. She really didn't want to do that, and she didn't even know why she agreed. I had nothing to wear, so I thought about buying new clothes dozens of times. But in the end, I didn't. I would look cheesy either way. A girl with low self-esteem pondered. It's all because of the math teacher. Here's if he hadn't told us to write an explanatory note. Jolie still didn't understand why that woman had invited her. Thought I showed arrogance by mentioning the gym, or just out of curiosity about the student, and which her son often mentions. Jolie guessed. Whatever happens, All I have to do is eat in peace and leave. Let's not be nervous. She consoled herself. As they'd agreed, Nate met his classmate outside the church. Not hungry? Did you have breakfast? Wasn't hard to walk? Glad it didn't rain. Questioned the boy, annoying the older girl even more. The guy said that sometimes the mom is in the mood to invite guests to her house. Then the girl realized that wasn't the case at all. I think she was really excited because she invited my friend over for the first time since we moved in. She also paid a lot of attention to the food, thinking she would enjoy it more. Shared Nate. Nate also decided to ask about Jolie's favorite dish as well, but she didn't have one. And the girl wasn't at all interested in sharing her preferences. One should criticize those who can afford to hide such things. And the high school girl eats soup with Bob every night. On the way home, Nate admitted that his mom is very interested in his grades and school life. She asked about the best student in the class, and I unintentionally seemed to ramble on. I guess she's curious about you because most all of my stories have been about you, he explained. But whether it was definitely so, the girl never could find out. You came to the office because of the letter of explanation, didn't you? I think you also know that it was because that situation involved me too. I'm not going to ask you about it. All I did at home was talk about the injustice of my math teacher, said Nate. The guys still didn't understand why they'd been told to write a letter of explanation, even though they'd done nothing. Jolie, Nate, and Bob were just scapegoats for his anger, but the high school student said Bob deserved it after all, because he was the one who threw the basketball right in the teacher's direction. Now that I think about it, what did his words mean? He said he was afraid of something, so he's staying in that house. Jolie didn't understand. Should we have invited him too? He should have written a letter of explanation too, right? Wondered Nate. But the girl explained that a classmate would hardly come as well, because he's always doing what he does, like sleeping. Isn't that weird? I've never seen you and him together, but sometimes it feels like you two are really close. Nate spoke up, much to the girl's embarrassment. She didn't think anyone would be able to guess. Bob, who is usually quiet, as if he doesn't exist, somehow seems to be involved in your affairs. A classmate remarked. But the kid only suggested that maybe the other one was a philanthropist, or maybe he hated math too. Jolie hadn't even realized Nate thought that. No, it's just his guess, right? Doesn't matter if he knows something, though, as long as others don't find out. She calmed herself. Then the guy also mentioned the moment Jolie got sick. If you think about it that way, the day you passed out and were lying in the nurse's station, you were thankful for the stove and the window. He stated sharply, I only came to check in with you between variables. I've never done anything like that before, replied the boy, to clarify why he had broached the subject so abruptly. The classmates walked up to the guy's house. It was indeed a beautiful mansion. Although I expected something like this, but it's a more beautiful house than I imagined, pronounced Jolie to herself. Should I be grateful that half my mind is still occupied with what Nate just said? Otherwise, I'd be drowning in thoughts of inferiority. Reasoned the high school girl. In the lobby, the boys were greeted by the kid's mom. Welcome. You're here on time. It must have been hard to get here. You must be hungry? Greeted the guests with a lady's greeting. The butler escorted Jolie to the table. At this time, the lady of the house announced that there would be no other guests today besides the girl. I couldn't understand your taste, so I tried different things, and it ended up like this. The woman justified herself, although in fact it was too much, so even her son thought so. They took a seat at the table. With a clap of her hand, the woman summoned her servants. They hadn't served the warm food yet, for fear it might get cold, so the maids brought it only now. At the table, her mother was immediately interested in the guests' studies. She knew that her teachers praise her very much and say that she learns very well, so she asked whether the schoolgirl is engaged in additional lessons with a tutor. But the woman was very surprised when she found out that Jolie is fully engaged in herself. Jolie was served a steak. While the girl didn't know where to start her meal of meat, The mom was having a bit of an argument with her son about studying. It wasn't very comfortable. The next question from the woman was what university the child was aiming for. "I want to go where I can get good grades," the girl replied. But then the lady asked about the specific specialty, because the direction could coincide with her son's choice. "I already felt it at school. There's something strange and unpleasant about this woman's words. It's like she knows everything," Jolie said to herself. "Since you have good grades, it would be good to enter the medical field. And if it's abroad, it would be even better. Well, you can relax and go to law school or something." The woman recommended, but it seemed to the girl that she was only advising what was popular now. The high school senior decided to reply that she still had time to think about it, so she would think about it later. "I'll give in to you," she decided then. Suddenly, the girl got the question she was so afraid to hear. "What does your father do? I think he must be very proud to have such a clever daughter," added the aristocrat. Jolie didn't know what to do, and out of fright allegedly accidentally spilled a glass of juice on herself. The woman had no choice but to suggest a change of clothes. "A change of clothes would be nice. Manageress, Kim, please bring some clothes," she ordered the servant. The girl really hadn't expected such a question. No one had ever asked her about her father. She was really unprepared. Jolie didn't even ask her mom about it. Kim led the schoolgirl to some room. "Have a seat. I'll get everything right away," explained the house staff member, and the girl herself continued to speculate about the question of her father. "Why would such a question make me vulnerable? I don't want to be ignored, especially in front of her, and when Nate is around." A couple minutes later, the owner of the house came into the room. She brought with her some kind of t-shirt. "I think it will fit you. It should be comfortable," said the woman, for which Jolie thanked her, although the girl noticed that this lady was clearly up to something. The schoolgirl decided that she just needed a quick change of clothes. But then the woman started saying something to her under her arm. "Looks like I made a mistake earlier. It's all from lack of sleep. You don't have a father, right? And your mother doesn't seem to be in her right mind. Quite a complicated situation," Auntie said in a calm voice. "I like people like you. Children who come out of difficult family situations have a certain quality. Despite their young age, supporting such children gives me satisfaction. Many people consider it a social responsibility of the rich, but I would call it a privilege." "Unfortunate," she said. To get away from the heavy topic, the woman decided to ask for a smile from her guest. As the girl put on the shirt she had been given, it reminded her of something. These clothes were for the servants in their house. "It looks good on you. Don't you want to look in the mirror?" Humiliated the woman. The girl was not afraid and answered her so sharply. "You did it to say something," Julie remarked. The woman then asked if the girl liked her son, but it was the other way around, with Jolie pointing out that she might be the one the prince likes. "My son is a good kid. He'll even cover a dog with a newspaper just to keep it from getting wet. But still, you have to know the difference between affection and attention, right?" She let the teenager go. How much the woman annoyed the quiet man at that moment. "You even help me with such nonsense that only dogs understand," thought the schoolgirl. "But you couldn't tell the difference. That's why you invited me, didn't you?" At this question, the woman merely put her hand on the girl's shoulder she indicated, in a tone of passive aggression, that she liked Jolie's attitude. But that is to say, she should have controlled her tongue. "You want to reach the heights, keep that in mind. If you need money, I'll give it to you. If you need clothes, I'll provide them. If you need food in the house, I'll provide it. If you get a scholarship, thanks to our foundation, you will be able to see a world that is nothing like the one around you now," the stranger's mother said. "Of course, provided you don't forget the fundamental difference between you and my son," the woman said lastly and left the room. A fundamental difference. At first glance, the offer looks tempting. This woman's help would provide an opportunity to change the current situation, but she hides a line that must not be crossed. She presented it as if Jolie could soar in the sky, but in reality the wings would have been broken from the start. Still, The suggestion is relevant for the moment. But can I hold on to it, knowing it's a hand outstretched with clear clarity? Which life is more humbling? Pondered Jolie. After this provocative conversation, Jolie asked the woman to give her name. Nate's son doesn't call his mother aunt, said the high school girl. That night, Bob lay on the second floor, contemplating the fact that his girlfriend was now near their mutual classmate, the son of a major. His head was a mess, so the guy decided he should exercise. He took a lying down position and started doing push-ups. At the same time, the bully was thinking about how he could make up with his roommate. Bob decided that he should go out for a run. When he opened the door, Jolie was standing in front of him, wet from the rain. It was obvious that the girl was in a terrible mood. The high school girl silently went to the second floor. She plopped down on the boy's bed. "Oh, no, well, I'm so hated, so angry, it's like I'm going crazy. How these people who live in affluence are annoying. All these people are annoying. Die, all of you!" screamed the girl, who was very angry. "Fine, dirty the bed all you want. It was time for a change anyway." Resigned to her yelling, Bob said. The guy also picked up on the fact that the friend was in new clothes. "I spilled some juice on my clothes, and they gave me the shirt their servants are wearing. They did it on purpose, and I was trying to ignore it." An upset Jolie explained. Then her neighbor asked her why she didn't want to change her clothes. But it was obvious that if the schoolgirl took off her clothes, she would be naked. She did not even bring her own clothes, as she was in a hurry. At that moment, Bob silently handed her his shirt. "Then put this on. Your clothes are too wet anyway," he decided, and turned away so as not to embarrass his student. "But what about you? What are you going to wear yourself?" The girl asked, but all she heard in response was a request that she throw him a shirt. After Jolie changed her clothes, Bob tore her blouse mercilessly with his strong hands. The girl was angry. "Why would you rip my clothes? I was going to alter it and wear it," reported the excellent girl. "It's times like this that I wonder if you have pride or not," the guy replied, tossing the other man's item into the trash. But the question of clothing for Bob still remained. "It's raining and chilly. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold? If you don't have anything to wear, why don't you at least put a blanket on?" Bob hadn't really expected that answer. He climbed up to Jolie's second floor to warm up a bit, though he didn't give the appearance of being cold. "Better snuggle up yourself. I'm not cold," he declared, but her friend still decided to cover the guy up. "If you catch a cold, don't blame me," she said in a serious tone, but with a touch of concern. Now that they were sitting together on the same bed, Bob didn't know how to start a dialogue. "Should I ask what was there? Or should I ask my mother first?" pondered the boy. But the girl was the first to start the conversation regarding his fresh wound. Bob, as usual, decided to turn it into a joke. "Don't hit people. It's scary what happens when you start hitting with a nice hand like your mother's," he said. It was a maneuver so he could move on to more serious things. "How often do you get drunk? Hard?" a friend asked, sincerely interested. "No, it's like a seizure. You just have to wait for it to pass. And you have to be careful when she throws something," the girl said and exhaled sadly. At that moment, she wanted to hear Bob's situation as well. "You are now. I think that would be fair. Now that your secrets are out, do you want me to reveal mine as well? It's really a Jolie-style decision. Also, words like that from her seem to imply that she really wants to continue this relationship." He thought for a second. The guy decided to tell his story. "My father was a gangster. He passed away a few years ago. Well, even when my father was alive, life wasn't easy." Bob began his story. "After my father's death came the real time of war, because the revenge violence haunted me persistently. I'm not going to go into such details, of course, but however, it seems in some ways I feel even relieved." A friend confessed at that moment. "Probably wanted to confess his feelings too," pondered the strong boy. I guess he was just as human as her mother. At least that's what Bob himself thought. That same night, the girl confessed that she wished his life had turned out better. so it wouldn't be on the level of a neighborhood thug. Anyway, he's already dead. Are you afraid of a dead man? You know, the living are more frightening, she said to encourage the guy. He wasn't beaten. Someone else had to suffer. You look like your father, and you love like this, showing off your power. The girl went on to say, after analyzing his story. Do you sleep a lot too, like your father? No, I think it would be hard to be a gangster if he slept that long. Jolie continued to try to turn it into a joke this time, though the guy, of course, denied that he was sleeping very much. Hey, it seems like you sleep at least 18 hours out of 24 hours a night, right? For the record, I barely get 5 hours of sleep, the interlocutor said sweetly. Then the guy confessed why he actually sleeps so much. As it turns out, he believes that if you close your eyes, no one will piss you off. That's why Bob constantly has the urge to fall asleep and have some interesting dreams. After he had said everything he wanted to say, Bob silently started downstairs. He went to make soup. You can go downstairs and study, or you can do something else, he advised the lady. But Jolie needs books to do that. The girl also asked him not to forget the eggs. What were you doing in there anyway? Didn't even eat? Asked the friend to the hungry little girl. Jolie decided to follow him, and while she was going down the stairs, the guy stopped abruptly. Bob silently turned around and looked directly into the girl's eyes. Her head was quite wet still. The friend took his hand off the handrail of the steps to fix the girl's beautiful hair a little. I'll get you some towels. Dry your hair, the man said thoughtfully. The next morning, the guys were already sitting in class, in their seats as usual. Jolie was once again mulling over her recent interactions with her boyfriend. What can I say about Bob? Sometimes I think he's so nice to me. It's kind of amazing, debated Jolie to herself. He gives me his clothes. When he hears that I've been disrespected, he gets angry. Even if I act rashly, he sighs and accepts everything. He's also good at making soup and doesn't try to exploit or threaten others, even when he sees my weaknesses, pondered the girl. Also, when I was sick, he brought in a stove, and he covered the window from the sun. The protagonist remembered, but the girl realized that she should stop thinking about him. Now is not the time to worry about such things. Even if Bob gets naked and dances in front of me, in no way it should bother me, decided the girl, as she had exams to start soon. The girl was pulled from her musings by Nate, who came over to inquire about her classmates' well-being. Why did you leave in a hurry then when I went to get an umbrella? Aren't you sick? He inquired. However, Jolie had to reiterate once again that she was fine. The girl didn't understand why he approached her at all. Doesn't he know that every time he talks to me, all eyes are on him? The honors student remarked. A classmate handed the girl her shirt. For that, she was truly grateful to him, though nothing would ever override those words from his mother again. If my mom said something tactless that day and offended you, I will apologize on my behalf. Not that there's any malice in that, but sometimes she speaks without thinking, he remarked. Nate was a prince who really doesn't know anything. Then the girl didn't hold back and asked how it felt to be so protected. The boy didn't seem to expect to hear such a question, but before he could answer, the teacher walked into the classroom and the lesson began. So you need to form groups of 2. Choose one of the topics presented here to study. The class head will present the list of groups and topics today before the end of the day. Everyone pay attention, bow, informed the entire audience by the teacher. Jolie really hated group projects. She thought it was just cumbersome and noisy. First of all, the world is meant to be lived alone. So why on earth would we want to do anything with anyone? It's much more efficient to do things alone, the best student in the school thought. All because of idiots with overly positive illusions about society. Anyway, I don't have any friends who would ask me to do something about them. The high school girl knew exactly that. The girl remembered that she could work with Bob. Isn't it only natural that he and I would end up paired together? And then, even if I were at school with him, no one would think it was strange. And going from home to school, walking around the streets, That sort of thing would be possible. The girl thought, but at that moment, Nate decided to suggest that they work together. Until when is he going to make it look like he's a prince on a white horse? Thinks that he will save me since I have no one to do it with? The girl, without a second thought, decided to refuse the collective work. Then a classmate decided to ask who she had in mind for this assignment. That question, which is nothing special, is confusing for some reason. Is it because he knows Nate means Bob? She wondered. It already seemed to the girls that this guy wasn't too different from his mother. Then the desk of the best student of the class was abruptly approached by Helen. The girls suddenly decided to offer to work together her hated classmate. Jolie was greatly surprised. "Don't you think that you and I are a little different?" replied the excellent student. "What, are you ignoring my favor? I'm saying this because I really want to say something to you. Otherwise, I guess I won't hold back," added the bitch. She has something to say about my mother? There's a mountain because of that. I don't want to be with any of them. But if I had to choose one, it would be... The schoolgirl didn't finish, but the answer seemed to pop up immediately. "It sounds like you're straight up itching to say something," said Jolie. Now the honor student thought it was time to shut that mouth somehow. After they talked it over, Jolie also turned her attention to Bob sleeping on the back desk. "Said he was sleeping a little bit? Yep, how about that? I'm deaf right now then." Helen called her classmate up to the roof to say what she wanted to say, with both of them clearly not thrilled about the encounter. "Actually, you should be thankful for that. Did you want me to say that in front of the others?" The bully continued sarcastically. Now came the moment when the bitch could say the very thing she had planned. "What do you really want to tell me?" Jolie decided to start first. "Why did you go to our classmate's house? Why did his mom invite you?" In an angry tone, Helen asked, to which the protagonist replied that the guy's mom was only interested in who had first place in school. "Thinking about the witch in this house. Helen's just a bug in front of her. I can deal with her." Decided the quiet girl was brave. The excellent girl wanted to get right to the point. Jolie asked why the bitch thought she could control an ordinary classmate with her mother's help. The interlocutor continued to drag out the intrigue, unclear why. "Get right to the point, Helen. If you're going to say something roundabout, don't call me again," informed Jolie. "Wow. You really don't know? I heard your mom is visiting a motel in the city in broad daylight, and how dare you even live off the money from that kind of business? You think because you're the best in school, you can do that? And Nate is only being nice to you and out of character, not because he likes you," said the bully with a smirk. "My dad saw her twice there. Your mom stood out because she was tall, had unusual clothes, and a strange gait." Helen continued to tell me. Jolie just couldn't believe it. "Mom is crazy, so she couldn't do something like that. No way." The poor little girl didn't realize. "I wish you knew about this. It's really annoying when dirt looks down on you," said a classmate. Jolie tried to the last to not be influenced by what people like Helen were saying. "Actually, my parents are very worried. They said that since there is a daughter of such a woman in the school, shouldn't it be reported? He said that if you do that kind of work, you get all sorts of dirty diseases, and that means you can infect others as well." The wench informed humiliatingly. Jolie then tried to defend herself and asked why the classmate's father was there, but Helen replied that he was walking by because he had a business meeting. There are only bars next to the motel. They are not open during the day. If you just walk down the main street, you won't see anyone coming in or out of there, because the entrance to such places is designed to avoid prying eyes. Smart girl's point. At that moment, the bitch just couldn't take it anymore and slapped the quiet one with all her might. But Jolie was not deterred. The girl pinned her classmate against the roof fence. She sent Helen away without remorse. "Why don't we try to see how this ends? If a rumor spreads that the man who paid me the money was your father, who's going to be in big trouble?" The honors student boldly replied, "It's your mother who's going to hell. The person who has the most to lose is you. You're going to lose your family in exchange for the easy words you used to tease a classmate." blackmailed Jolie. After the opponent pushed the girl away, the other guys appeared on the roof. Are they done? Why are the girls fighting so fiercely? We wanted to pretend we didn't notice, but it was too noisy, said one of them. They were the hooligans of their criminal neighborhood. The boldest one approached the quiet one to tell her that he was on the side of the hotties. The girls were very much frightened, but in a moment their savior came, their classmate, Bob. I am glad to see him home, but I have never been happier than I am now. He did come at just the right second, and it looks like he's here for the long haul. Now there's a man who can take care of them. But before he did, the manly friend beckoned to Jolie. I have something to tell you, he said in a menacing tone. Bob appeared on the horizon very timely when the girls were being harassed by the hooligans of the criminal neighborhood. The manly guy asked one of them, Helen, to go along with him as he had a conversation with the girl. The main character, her classmate Jolie, was surprised. She did not understand what was going on, but had to only silently observe it. After that, the lady had to follow her savior and get out of the roof. For a second, Jolie was alone with the bad guys, respectively heard their strange whispers. Does he like Helen? If they touched her, there'd probably be a waterfall of blood, wouldn't there? I heard that if that bastard focuses his attention on someone, he'll beat them until their head falls off. The young guys continued to discuss, not even paying attention to the lady standing next to them. But at one point, the bravest of the gang still decided to talk to Jolie. Well, I liked her initially. Hey, can we talk for a while? An obnoxious type began to approach. About what? I had planned to go on like this to learn 100 English words, solve math tests, sort the wrong answers, and then read material that summarizes cases of social inequality and essay solutions. Would your talk be more useful to me? Jolie easily and unexpectedly for the thugs themselves, competently made them shut their mouths. There was nothing left for them to do but deny it. As soon as the girl also left the roof, following her friends, the bad guys thought about the fact that they needed to learn too. At that time, near the entrance to the school roof, Helen called out to her classmate. Hey, Bob, you said you had something to tell me, reminded the girl, and moved closer to him to talk. Unexpectedly for the beauty herself, instead of bickering and such, the big guy only asked a question about the jewelry on her hair. The guy inquired where she bought the barrette. My mom bought it for me when she left town. Why is that? A classmate asked in response. But in the end, Bob explained himself by saying that his curiosity had been piqued and silently walked away. He called me in just to ask me that? Well, thanks to him, I was able to avoid trouble. Continuing to be in a state of shock thought, miss, though at that moment, another thought crept into the cocky girl's head. Wait, maybe he did it on purpose to save me. Does he really like me? Helen thought for a second. I never would have thought it, but I don't feel anything for him. Although if you look closely, he looks pretty. No, I could say pretty good. It's like I'm losing my head. But thanks to him, it's like everyone is afraid of me. The high school girl continued to ponder. The main character at this time was also contemplating the situation that had happened, and the girl herself was quite offended. What the? No matter how much I think about it, I can't make sense of it. How could he call Helen in a situation like this? What the hell did he say to her? It's not like they've ever looked each other in the eye in their lives. Jolie reasoned on the way to her favorite hideaway. Even as she came into the house, the girl continued to think about the recent events. Still, jealousy was taking her, no matter how even Jolie herself tried to hide it. Helen? Why her? Well, she's nice enough, but stupid. The high school girl continued to ponder. And what did he do to her? Bastard! Why did I even go on the roof? Nervous Jolie, and from anger, kicked her desk chair. This incident really pissed the girl off. It was then that the latest statements from the lady she disliked began to pop into the protagonist's head. I heard that your mother visits a motel in broad daylight. Told her once, Helen, but Jolie herself still thought and believed that it could not be. The girl knew her mother couldn't have done such a thing. Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even think about it. No matter how much I ponder, I'm convinced that my mother doesn't have the will to live to endure such a thing. Unconsciously, the excellent student tried to calm herself down. Jolie knew perfectly well that her mother was alive simply because she was breathing. A person who didn't expect a better future and didn't intend to make changes on her own. At least, that's what her daughter was quite sure of. Moreover, the girl remembered the day she had stayed overnight and was walking with Bob when she ran into her mother. At that moment, the woman's reaction was more sensitive than usual. The reason for this emotional outburst from the mother was probably Bob, the big, pumped-up guy standing next to Jolie. Because the woman thought her daughter had spent the night with a man. The age difference between the main character's mom and Jolie is only 17. I realized a long time ago that my dad is not a normal person because he got a girl younger than me pregnant and he had no responsibility. Noted the protagonist. Of course, it is possible that he died as a result of an unexpected accident. Whatever the cause, however, Jolie's mother, who gave birth to her child at 17, saw her daughter return after a day with a man, absent from home all day and night. Perhaps the woman had crossed paths with her past self. Not for any money would such a girl trust a man. And it was really clear. The high school girl was distracted from her heated thoughts by her roommate, who had also returned home. Then Bob immediately offered his friend a snack of soup. The girl immediately refused, but the classmate only silently pulled out all the necessary ingredients from the top shelf. That's when Jolie noticed his persistence and decided not to remain silent in this situation. "Hey, I said I'm not eating. You eat it yourself," rudely replied a classmate. Bob himself, without any emotion, calmly answered her. "Annoyed? And you've grown up, taking all your anger out on me," he said aloud. As the protagonist began to deny her aggression, Bob picked up on the fact that she was pissed off about that fight on the roof. He obviously knew one thing, but not the other, so Jolie had no problem deciding to correct his assumption. Not because, but since the topic came up, I'll ask, what the hell did you want to tell Helen? The enraged high school student persistently clarified, in response to which the guy turned around with a smile on his face to utter the following. "Why are you asking like I'm some husband cheating on his wife?" The senior's assertion made the girl even angrier. "What, cheating? You think that's the right word for our relationship?" Jolie continued to yell at him, but he didn't even finish listening to her and turned away again to continue cooking his specialty. "That hungry? Now wait, I'll be quick," he pronounced, and further followed the recipe. At this point, Jolie was still assuring that she wasn't going to eat anything. Bob knew where this conversation was headed, so he decided to bluntly inform his friend that he couldn't pretend to know her, no matter how sad it would be. In response to which, Jolie, of course, inquired as to the reason for this. "You ask because you don't know? Then remain in ignorance," Bob said proudly. Jolie decided to stand up at that moment to get closer to her interlocutor. "So you're saying you called Helen because you were afraid our relationship would be exposed? Like a smoke bomb?" The protagonist decided to clarify. The words about their relationship sharpened the guy's attention, which is actually why he asked the leading question. "From the moment you threw the basketball, we're already being discussed in class," explained the girlfriend. The jock also admitted that Helen has also recently been interested in the guy's relationship. And Jolie herself already had another classmate in mind for the same reason, the new, handsome classmate, Nate. Although when remembering the rich guy, the feeling was already a little different. I guess that didn't count as a good example in this situation. "If it bothers you, you shouldn't meddle in my affairs. Didn't I tell you that this is a sleeping habit? You shouldn't have interfered even in your sleep," said the stern Bob sternly. The guy openly believed that there was nothing good for his roommate to be personally acquainted with him. The girl herself tried to prove that there was nothing wrong with it, as some silly rumors were not important to her at all. But Bob again disagreed with her. "That's for you. People are different." The cook corrected her and also asked her to move out of the way, taking care of the hot fire nearby. She listened to her classmate and decided to step aside. "Why, at this point, my frustration has subsided. I need to keep studying. Otherwise, I feel more like I want to be around him too." Jolie thought to herself for a second. But still, the same main question continued to torment the protagonist, which she decided to ask directly. No matter what, why did you leave me alone? What if those idiots wouldn't have let me go?" The high school girl decided to clarify. "Is there any possibility that you, who even kicks me, can't go through with it?" Jolie continued to assert. The girl herself knew perfectly well and was confident that her friend wouldn't do anything strange to her. As strange as it might sound, such were her words that made the guy push all his thoughts back. Now he really wondered what the very bastards who had stormed the roof could have done to her. That was what he decided to ask his friend. The girl confessed that the bullies had told her she was beautiful. At this point, without further explanation, she just walked away towards her workplace. "One egg, and make it sharp?" asked the little girl, just to somehow get rid of the awkward feeling inside her. That evening, the boys walked together as usual, holding on to a common stick toward the girl's house. At that moment, Jolie wondered seriously what Bob thought of her now. "It's because I used to be very annoyed with Helen. Could it be that he thinks my character now is a terrible character?" Jolie couldn't stop thinking. On the other hand, the girl realizes that he had no other option. She was the one who misunderstood everything. She should have spoken about it earlier, though. Accidentally was in it yours, where it was possible to warn. Bob's words kept rolling around in her head about not being able to say he knew her, since there was nothing good for Jolie herself in being acquainted with such a bully. "He has a nice voice. He's only a little intimidating," pondered the high school girl. At the same time, the girl admitted to herself that she would have agreed if the reason was that the existence of the warehouse would be exposed. Jolie had the realization that the guy could only do it because he feared for his friend's reputation. She decided to confess it to him to at least start a topic of conversation. The girl admitted that her hands kept sweating as they held onto the piece of wood. "I think we should use a different material instead of duct tape," informed the protagonist. That's when the topic of conversation turned to Jolie's plans for this weekend. The girl said that she would not be able to come to their house as she had urgent business in the city. "In the motel alley," Jolie said in a sudden voice that made the big man stop. He thought he'd just heard the place she'd said. Immediately, Bob grabbed his friend's arm, questioning why she needed to go there. Initially, Jolie thought he hadn't heard, but the guy himself kept demanding the reason. At that point, Jolie revealed that she was heading to such a non-safe place for a reason. She needed to come for her mom's work as well. Said seemingly in jest, but really out of concern, the girl thought, looking at her friend's puzzled face. "I don't think my mom would do something like that, but she must have a reason to go there. Even though I shut Helen's mouth, I need to know the exact situation because it will help me react properly in an emergency. However, going to such a place alone is a bit scary, and at times like this, the only person I can rely on is Bob." The protagonist continued to reason. "The moment Bob found out about my situation with my mom, I wanted to disappear. I didn't think I'd ever be glad that he knew." It read in the high school girl's mind. "But what if he chooses to stay out of my business? Should I ask to come with me? I don't want to sound indecent," pondered the poor girl. But before she could even think of how to gently hint to him about it, the guy immediately asked what time she was heading there. The girl decided to ask if he was going with her. "Isn't that why you brought it up?" Bob asked. "Well, he's not short on brains." Jolie revealed that she was going to go there around 11, and even offered to buy him a burger as payment for his help. Bob himself refused, though. "Why? Are you really going to go downtown and eat soup?" I'm generous. Take advantage. The honor student continued to insist, but Bob stubbornly refused. Afterward, the guy let go of Jolie's hand and once again held out the stick for her to walk on. I think it would be okay to just hold hands and walk. The girl thought at that moment. The next morning, Jolie was picking out an outfit she could go out in. The skirt will probably be casual. Maybe I should have bought clothes. She reasoned like a typical girl. At the same time, she was well aware that she wasn't going there to have fun. Therefore, do not think about the reaction of someone on the appearance of some gray mouse. Jolie continued to choose her look. Her friend came in wearing a cap. He looked quite grown up in it, which the older girl noticed. The classmate looked back at the construction store near where the boys had met in town. Last time it rained, it looked like the waterproof film on the ceiling of the house was torn, he remarked. Bob was talking about the same house they often went to together. While they were mutually discussing the matter, an employee approached them. Do you need anything? I can help you, the salesman replied kindly. So the guy took off his hat and put it on his friend. He went to the consultant to ask about the waterproof film. Bob discussed the matter with the man, and afterward returned to his friend. Once they walked on together, Jolie decided to clarify why her classmate had handed her his cap. Cover your face. In a serious tone, he ordered the girl. The girl was also wondering how Bob himself would get away, since the place they were going to was to remain unknown. But the boy asked not to ask many questions and just follow him, which the high school girl did. The very same counselor from the store was seeing them off. Once they reached the nearest nook, Bob decided to wonder what his partner was trying to find out. Mom must be around here somewhere. I want to know why she's here and what she's doing, clearly informed Jolie. Then the classmate asked what further plan of action on the daughter's idea. When the girl told him that she was going to go in and ask, Bob was obviously not enthusiastic about the idea. At the very least, it wasn't safe. Not only are you standing outside a hotel, what rumors will spread if you also go in there? He explained. Bob tried to convey that there may or may not be locals inside. Even if there's only one person who recognizes you, you can never guess how rumors will spread. The seasoned bully went on to say, So, we don't know when or where she's coming out and we want to wait like this? How many people are in the motel right now? The man decided to ask. But the girl stated that the last thing she thought was that anyone walking in there would recognize her face as well as her partner's, though that doesn't really offer any guarantee. But Bob pointed out that it was now Saturday morning, and yesterday was still Friday evening, which meant a different flow of people. Rumors are like tattoos. They are not removed until the end, even if they are untrue. Rather, as time passes, they become more and more provocative. Do you want to live your whole life among such rumors? The smart guy said aloud. Got it, I was just saying. Did you really think I was going to go there? But you're so worried about me? With a smile on her face, she asked the question. The guy only huffed a little at her in response, though. You're usually smart, but now you're being stupid for some reason, he said in a serious tone. So, the fact that at your old school you used to hit a teacher in the back of the head with an ashtray until he passed out was too exaggerated a rumor? Decided Jolie translated to him. Since I know you, I am not afraid. You may be tall and a bit bulky, but you're kind. I already have a bad reputation, so this won't make me cold or hot, pronounced the stubborn girl. They laughed together for a while, and it seemed that the atmosphere had already become calm. But as suddenly, Bob sharply pressed his friend to him. Initially, the girl didn't understand what was happening, but then she noticed other people behind the big man's back. As it turned out, it was a forced security measure, which was invented by her friend. That said, for some reason, the protagonist was content to be so very embarrassed. Did people really pass through there? Stepping aside, she decided to ask the guy that question. What? What are you talking about? Do you really think I did that just to give you a hug? With surprise, he decided to ask. But Jolie denied it. She revealed that she was going to ask if he was trying to punish a high school girl for being annoying. To get away from the awkward situation, the protagonist decided to follow through with her plan, though she herself didn't know what to do now. "But I can't see all the entrances from here. It would be better to just walk through the alleys," she said, and headed off in an unknown direction. But Bob ordered her not to go around. He decided to go to the right and send Jolie to the left. It would be much safer and quicker. As soon as they were separated, even if only for a short time, the girl was immediately sad. She realized that she wasn't good with boys. She didn't have a father, and that was the reason. At the same time, the protagonist realized that this reaction wasn't because it was Bob. Anyone who would do that. A traumatized little girl would have reacted that way. She was still mad at herself about that accidental hug situation. Jolie felt like she had been too rough with her friend towards her roommate. "Have I ever been hugged by someone so hard that I could feel the warmth of their body? Ah, there was that once, and by accident," she pondered. At that moment, while the high school student was sitting around the corner, she heard someone yelling at the woman. "No, Auntie. The mop rag needs to be wrung out good. Look, the whole floor is wet." The sounds of the unknown continued. It was then that the girl realized that it could be her mother. The supervisor continued to reprimand the poor woman. "You don't understand me? Hey, go in there and squeeze well. After that, empty all the trash cans in the rooms on the second floor. You don't do that, there will be no lunch, understand?" Threatened the unpleasant type. After his rebuke, he immediately walked into the entrance of the room and accidentally ran the rib of his foot on the slippery, wet floor that had just been cleaned, for which he became even more angry. He also yelled at Jolie's mom for the cleaning lady accidentally putting a box of rags in the wrong corner. At that time, Jolie only quietly watched what was happening. The situation had made her so angry that she wanted to chase after the man and throw a bucket of garbage at him. She wanted to snatch the mop out of her mother's hands and throw it away right then and there. I wanted to immediately grab my mom's wrist and drag her away. In this filthy place, there was nothing good. The only thing I wanted to do was to run away and never live the same way again. But the protagonist could not interfere. She was not supposed to show her face at all, and she understood it perfectly well. The mother can't do anything different. That being said, in the very small town where this whole story takes place, no one would hire a minor like Jolie for a job. Even if a woman plows from early morning and brings in a small amount of money, when that job disappears too, nothing good will come of it. As she continued to watch her mom, Jolie noticed the already completely exhausted poor employee fall to the floor. The girl had already blown up in order to run to save her family member. But that's when she was stopped by Bob, who appeared at the most inopportune moment. When the guy's silhouette appeared in front of her, she immediately started making excuses for her mom. "I'm not the reason she did that. That person doesn't have feelings like that." The high school girl began to narrate. Jolie said that the mother with her attack did not give rest. The girl herself also did not expect anything like that to fulfill any role directly to the mother, as well as the very obligations to her child. "Now that I've gotten used to her hitting me, it's made it even harder for me to clean up the mess in the house. If she's doing this for me, then why is it like this?" The honors student wondered, unable to hold back her tears at all. Bob tried to calm his friend and offered to personally approach her birth mother, but Jolie herself had no such desire anymore. Why? Are there people who make money easily? Don't stop them from working. Even if I try to stop her, it will start a seizure. A classmate dejectedly recounted. When he heard her say something like that, he immediately decided to do his best to keep the little girl from blaming herself for the situation, and asked her not to say such things. "It's because you don't know. You don't know what the years of living together with this man were like," replied her partner immediately. The girl explained that she couldn't do anything normally. She couldn't even enjoy anything. When once again she tearfully continued to confess all the horrors of her life, Bob just couldn't indifferently stand idly by. The boy came close to her and hugged her very tightly to calm her down a little. He realized that perhaps no one in his life had ever treated his friend so warmly, but it was obvious that moral and physical support was exactly what the schoolgirl lacked at that moment. "If you're going to cry, don't hold back." Perfectly fitting words he chose at that moment, and took the girl's head affectionately as he continued to soothe her. They stood in silent embrace for several minutes. Or rather, it was only Bob who hugged his friend. The girl herself simply could not realize why such a cruel fate had befallen her life path. Why Mom? Why? In hysterics, tried to answer herself Jolie, but the right words she could not pick up. At that moment, Bob took the girl's hand and turned it upside down with the back of his palm. There were bloody imprints from her fingernails, made on nerves in a fit of hysterics. "Doesn't that hurt?" "It bleeds," noted the boy. "I won't forget today, ever." After crying, Jolie said, and those were her last words spoken at that unpleasant moment. Bob took her hand tightly, but it didn't last long as the guys already had to go. After this moment of weakness from the main character, the boys still had to move on. As they were walking through the center of their town, Bob saw a sign from a fast food place. He suggested his friend eat a burger. "I don't feel like eating out," replied the frustrated little girl without thinking. But Bob knew that even when he got home, his classmate wouldn't have anything for dinner either. "I don't think you'll be in the mood to eat soup inside," he said menacingly, but it was also obvious that the jock cared about his girlfriend's health. However, Jolie herself took those words slightly differently. "You make it sound like it was natural for me to go to that house with you." At the same second, the girl stopped abruptly. Then a great idea came to her. "Let's have a picnic." With deep insight and flashes of joy, the lady immediately suggested, "It's Saturday, and the weather is nice. Let's buy some food and have a picnic with the money we'd use to buy a hamburger." The little girl persisted in her suggestion, after which she also began to inquire about the amount of money in her friend's account. It seemed a little strange and insistent. Bob didn't even realize all of Jolie's serious intentions. "Are you going to rob me now?" he jokingly decided to ask. In truth, the girl only wanted to distract herself from her confused, horrible thoughts that tormented her outside. "I don't even know why my mom does this. I also feel resentment for myself for not being able to do anything about it," the protagonist admitted to herself at that moment. While these emotions may be expressed by impulse rather than reason, Jolie herself tried to keep that out of her mind and take a different path. "Maybe it would be hard if I were alone. But this way, I have Bob by my side," reasoned the girl, and kept looking at her savior friend. His mere presence made her feel much better, and even get away from disturbing thoughts, from which, after all, it is not so easy to get rid of. But next to Bob, she seemed to forget about everything around her and felt as comfortable as possible. "You can use it," the friend said, and a second later his wallet with money was in his classmate's hands. And to tell the truth, it was not a small amount of money. At least, it would be enough to pay for the meal he had planned. "Hey, since you have 300,001, you should keep it. You act like you're a major who throws money around," said the girl to the guy who was already starting to distance himself from her. As they searched for the supermarket, the girl moved a little away from her anxious thoughts. My soul, in which emotions were raging, was slowly calming down. Realized at that moment, the poor high school girl. For a long time, she thought that friends were not necessary. Now Jolie is sincerely grateful to her cohabitant, even for his simple existence in this world. He really became the closest person for the girl. Just having him around, how can you not get that kind of support and comfort? Well realized the schoolgirl. And it was really cool that still, this realization had come. After all, in any case, one should appreciate people who always come to the rescue. How close these two characters became, that even Jolie herself could not believe that now she has such a person. And to be honest, she thought that she would never be able to become so close to someone in her life. At that time, while the boys were walking around the center, their classmate Nate was driving with his mother in the car in the same neighborhood. The businesswoman, as usual, was discussing some work-related matters with the driver. She was instructing him to sell some stock immediately. "Yeah, I got it. For now, we'll just wait and see until next week," replied the man to her. Mom called the other business companions as well. "Manager, it's me. What happened to the factory? The end of next month? No, I just don't understand what's taking so long." Resentful on the phone, Mrs. "Are you not delayed in completing tasks because you were focused on other things these days? I've heard that you often have company dinners with your boss. You don't expect me to wait forever, do you?" The woman kept talking, which pissed off her son quite a bit. The guy couldn't stand listening to it 100 times a day. "We'll finish this in 2 weeks. Yes, and please find a place in the province. Is the manager old? Things are a little tough for him right now. Find someone else. Useless. Unrecyclable." Mom was yelling at her employees, which was simply impossible for the guy to listen to, so he even took out his phone to distract himself. In doing so, the woman saw her Nate suffering. She apologized and, as compensation, offered to go for a massage. But Mrs. didn't seem to understand that that's not what matters to a high school student, but attention from his mother. After the mom put her phone away, the woman asked what the kid's plans were. He wanted to go swimming. "I was thinking about eating some eel," she also shared in response. Then the topic of their conversation suddenly changed abruptly. The mom asked about how that son's classmate, Jolie's honors student, was doing. "How are you doing with that kid? You haven't talked about her anymore the last few days. Did you have a fight?" The woman began to ask. Then Nate explained that they weren't close enough to be intimately involved with each other. "Geez, and this is coming from my son who already knew everyone in my class?" The lady marveled. But it seemed to both the schoolboy and his mom that this girl was special. She was not like all the other students in the school. At the same moment, the boy decided that right now was a great time to ask what had happened that very day. "Mom, what did you talk to her about that day? What did you do to her? She said you personally brought her a change of clothes. Then Jolie left in a hurry," Nate recounted. That was pretty much all he knew. Although the mother woman understood that this poor, excellent girl could easily complain to her classmate, that child was a bit stubborn. The woman recalled aloud, emphasizing the complexity of Jolie's character. Such a character trait on the one hand liked the rich mom, but on the other hand, not. The woman really did not expect to hear on her account such rude, but at the same time truthful, heavy statements from a little girl. In the end, Nate only reminded his mother that it is not necessarily that Jolie likes that one at all. "Well, if you keep this up, you'll eventually marry a girl your mom will like. We're going to become a family. Isn't something like that obvious?" Asked the businesswoman to her son, and even then the guy felt an unpleasant yet casual pressure on him. Nate didn't want to hear it. Nate didn't understand what marriage was about if Jolie wasn't even talking to him yet. But he didn't want to get into an argument with the older woman, so he turned away to look out the window and think about what he'd said earlier. In fact, the new classmate thought he and Jolie could just be friends if he interacted with her like the rest of them. But the girl built walls everywhere. It was simply impossible to approach her. What speech could even go about friendship? If there's any reason, at best, the only person who communicates with Jolie at all is Bob. Understood the guy perfectly. He couldn't even find another connection anymore. At some point, Nate was thinking about it, looking out the window of his car, when he suddenly noticed the same guys Jolie and Bob who were walking together. It wasn't that hard to recognize them. More importantly, so this man, such as the big bully of the neighborhood, was next to the poor honors student. Nate couldn't see faces, but his instincts were screaming for it. His classmates were really his classmates in front of him. Without hesitation, Nate decided to get out of the car and follow them. He immediately told his mom that he would get off here, slammed the door, and walked toward his acquaintances. Just as I thought, they knew each other well. And more than I thought. How? How the hell? Didn't understand the guy who kept looking at the guys. I've always hit a wall that's been erected the way. He thought for a second as Jolie and Bob abruptly disappeared from his sight. The guys really weren't in front of him anymore. Maybe they'd turned into some alley or gone into some store. Nate didn't know if he should even call their names. But at the same time, the guy was very angry. They never got to meet that day. A few hours later, the guys were already at their house. Jolie decided to prepare a snack for their picnic, which Bob himself was not very happy about. The girl usually never cooked anything, so the guy was worried that something could go wrong. Actually, it happened as the high school girl cut herself, but nothing serious was there, so the girl continued cooking her sandwiches. Why don't you step back? No, you think I can't even make a sandwich. You don't even have to fry anything. Just chop the ingredients and put it together, soothed his classmate. But the guy was still standing over her soul, something Jolie was already starting to get a little angry about. Are you going to keep standing there like you're looking out for me? She told him, but she also realized that it would still be better for Bob to be in control of the process. Jolie made their culinary creations herself, but long enough. You're taking it so slow. Are we having dinner then? Said Bob over her hand, in response to which the protagonist only asked to wait a bit. She decided, since he had paid for all the ingredients, she would cook. But the friend decided not to stand aside and still help. Then he pulled out the lettuce leaves in order to rinse them. A few minutes later, Bob also prepared the perfect sauce for the sandwich, egg mayonnaise. Looks like the bully was really good at cooking. He got it all done pretty quickly. At this point, Jolie already had the sandwich basics ready. To keep Bob from grumbling about the speed of the girl's sandwich making, she asked him to lay out a newspaper outside for their picnic. Jolie wanted to eat there. When the guy went to perform the assigned task, he also ordered his cook to add a salad to their dish. Upon arriving back at the house, Bob was confronted by his girlfriend who had sandwiches in her hands. She was heading outside. Have some milk when you get back, Jolie asked him. Now everything was ready for the picnic. When the guy returned to the street, he noticed a beautiful picture in front of him, sitting Jolie on newspapers, near which are sandwiches prepared by her own. It would be great if I could take pictures of moments like this, thought the bulky man at that second. Even if just for a second, it would be nice if I could face that picture one more time. He marveled, but Jolie brought his thoughts back and told the boy to sit down next to her. It's time to make the first piece of Jolie's culinary creation. As it turned out, the sandwich is very tasty. The main heroine was delighted. Let's try again later, shall we? There's bread left over. Why do you always bring soup when you have money? Oh, it's not that I didn't like it. It's just that it's better. The delighted girl continued to mutter. She also handed the sandwich to Bob so that he could taste it. As soon as the bully took a bite of the sandwich, he could taste the sweet and sugary flavor. He decided to ask the girl how much jam she had put on the bread. As much as you can get. Isn't it delicious? With a smile on her face, the high school girl replied. Jolie didn't really know that her friend hated sweets, so the girl decided to ask why he hadn't told her sooner. She did, after all. You were talking about what I can't eat, not what I don't like, he prompted, washing down the sweet taste in his mouth with milk. Well, then you can eat it. The more you eat it, the better it tastes, the little girl jokingly replied. Bob, who seemed serious and stern at the same time, couldn't keep a smile off his face at that moment. And Jolie herself smiled back at him quite nicely. It was all wonderful, of course, but he decided that he should no longer trust her with cooking. At this time, seemingly on the sunniest day, something horrible happened. A bloody wood-like murder weapon was in the hands of a silhouette of a guy. On the morning of the same day, Jolie, as usual, was going to school. While the girl was putting things in her backpack, she noticed a money bill on the table. But she was sure it wasn't because it was almost time for her to go to university. First of all, that kind of money won't help in any way. The only reason I study until the day I die is to get a university scholarship. The honors student admitted to herself. Nothing had changed in her situation. Or rather, she saw with her own eyes all this horror. The whole situation with her mother had definitely left a trace in the minor's psyche. But, however sad it was, nothing could be done about it. Though, strangely enough, the girl didn't feel very bad. Whether she had already accepted such a terrible fate of her life, or whether recent events had distracted her from bad thoughts about it, still, the picnic with her friend had been quite fun. I think until the heat comes on, it's worth another try. Jolie also wanted to. Now she went on to speculate as to what day would be most suitable for this. We can't do it on weekdays since we'll be free by evening. Maybe we could do it on Saturday. I think we should get a few cans of tuna. When Jolie walked into her school office, of course, she immediately saw her friend sleeping on the desk there. At least raise his head and greet each other. For a second thought, Jolie, but did not get upset about it, because such behavior in society for them was already a habit. By the way, come to think of it, Bob always gets to school early. He tries not to be late or... No sooner had the protagonist finished her thoughts than a new classmate immediately said hello to her. Nate abruptly informed the high schooler that he had a conversation to have, so they should have met after school. A conversation? And what does Nate want to tell me? Did Mrs. Ho say anything to him? Jolie wondered. The atmosphere was unusual. It all annoyed the girl, but there was nothing she could do about it. She decided that it was better to concentrate on her studies, because the exam was just around the corner. But her concentration didn't last long. After a couple of minutes, she heard Helen, a pissed-off classmate of hers, come up to her friend and start talking to him about the very incident after the meeting on the roof. Jolie was simply shocked as Helen called her friend by her full name. Even the honors student herself had never done such a thing. I wrote it here. I'm afraid you'll be embarrassed if I tell you in front of the others, the girl declared, and slid the sheet with the message across the desk. This kind of thing is not uncommon at school, so Jolie decided that the most important thing was not to look back. It's never a good idea to do that, lest you get caught eavesdropping. But still, the jealous high school senior couldn't stand it and turned around. Then she saw a smiling Bob reading the note, which made her even more jealous. Jolie's thoughts continued to be filled with jealousy. When did those two become so close? Didn't he call Helen that day to help me? The protagonist didn't understand. Bob himself, after reading the message, noticed that the new classmate sitting in front of him was scrutinizing Bob's own every rustle. The strange things didn't stop there. The teacher came into the classroom and asked Bob to come up for a moment. The reason Jolie sensed something wrong was the natural expression on her class teacher's face. Why are so many people smiling today looking at Bob? The girl didn't understand what was going on. After her friend left class, Jolie had only 2 questions. What was going on? And why wasn't he coming back? She speculated that something might have happened at the boyfriend's house. But Bob didn't come to class even when lunchtime was over. Everyone in the class seemed to have the same curiosity and whispered here and there. No one came up and asked about Bob's whereabouts. It would be weird if Jolie asked about it. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But what if it attracts the attention of others? So the protagonist decided to wait a little longer. But things had clearly gone wrong. That same day, one of his classmates burst into the classroom and shouted to the whole class that Bob had been taken away by the police. All the classmates started whispering and thinking about the reason for this event. The kids started to think that the boy had just had a fight with someone. Could it be that he committed a crime? There have been a lot of strange rumors about him. They say they're from a gangster family or extorting money on the street. If the police came, I guess we can still think about him running away. If he caused such a criminal in a case, wouldn't he be expelled? The classmates chattered. He's already instilling fear in other people. It'll be good for everyone if he gets kicked out of school, right? Another guy added. Classmates kept laughing at the fact that not even teachers would be able to say anything to bully Bob. At one point, Jolie couldn't stand listening to this anymore. Will you shut your mouths? She stood up from her desk and said clearly to the guys. That's when her classmates started asking her why she was saying that. They assumed that she liked the bully, and to their surprise, Jolie did not deny it at all. Not to inflame the conflict any further, Nate joined in on the defense of the school's best student. Seriously, that's enough. You don't even know what happened in the first place. He doesn't have to do anything for the police to pick him up, the rich kid explained, but the other classmates still thought Bob deserved it. With all this, the conflict subsided a little, and all the boys went to their places. That's when the kids started asking the teacher why their classmate Bob wasn't showing up. What happened? I heard the police caught him. Maybe he got into some kind of trouble. Well, well, hush, boys. He went there because they need to find out a few things, and that's it. You don't have to worry. Tried to appease them, the class teacher. The man realized that the kids would continue to disrupt the lesson by asking about the bully, so he decided to turn the topic to the subject of studying. These kids, maybe you should worry about something else? Are you preparing well for the exam? There's not much time left. Even if you're not going to go to college, if you lose to a neighboring class, you know the consequences, right? Reminded the educator. At this time, the protagonist continued to try to think about good things, repeating to herself that nothing terrible had happened, and it was just a trifle. But Jolie, of course, was still nervous. If he came out of the police station, he should be home by now, right? I need to find out what happened quickly and calm down. Otherwise, everything's out of hand, she decided, and was on her way out of the classroom. But that's when Nate met her. The guy caught up with the girl to ask her where she was going. She was about to go home, but the new guy reminded her that he had something to talk to her about. To save time, Jolie suggested that he tell her what he wanted to know while she walked toward home. Exams are coming up. I want to give my full attention to it. If the conversation isn't important, then I'll go, the honors student explained. Then the boys suddenly asked if Jolie was going to the police station. Suddenly, Nate said what the girl was so afraid to hear. I know you two are close. I've seen you. A bunch of questions popped into Jolie's head at that moment. Did he see it? Where? Saw me and Bob together. Does he mean the house? When I got caught? Was he following me? Why would he do that? Was Nate the kind of person who would do something like that? Pondered the shocked girl. The girl was already thinking of lying and telling him he was just mistaken, but Nate confirmed that he'd clearly seen the two of them together. In defense of herself, the girl explained that the newcomer shouldn't pry. Even so, what business is it of yours? She said, and then the boy had already been called by the headmistress. As it turned out, the woman came to pick up a classmate. We will take you directly home without any extra lessons, for safety reasons, she said. The woman also said there was an assault incident a few days ago near the town. It seems that the young master's classmate was chosen as the suspect. The gentleman decided it was better to be on guard, explained the child. At the same second, the girl asked Principal Kim to clarify who the suspect was. As it turned out, it was a student named Bob. Jolie just couldn't believe it. She knew her friend couldn't have done that. She was so now that she had even revealed what she had been hiding. And Nate also couldn't believe that such a good girl, the best student in the school, would trust a bully student like Bob. Why? Honestly, you can't tell from the looks of him with 100% certainty that he can't do such a thing, thought the new guy. It's none of my business. If there is no sin, won't it come out soon? Come along, young master. If you are late, Madam will be worried, said Kim. Before leaving, lastly, Nate offered his help in this situation. The guy promised that he could find out who it was who was involved in the situation with Bob, but the classmate persistently refused to help. The girl was still sure that her friend would soon get out anyway. The guy even wondered why Jolie was so sure of the bully. On what basis? What does she know about him? How well does she know him to make such a strong claim like that? Will you be able to find out? What kind of incident is this, and how confident are the police? If they weren't sure, would they have taken the student away during class? Is there any evidence? The student decided to ask the principal. Young master, you don't need to worry about such things. The woman tried to placate the boy, but the influential mom's son knew full well that she could make one call and find out everything. I don't think you're such an incapable person, Nate said definitively, and the woman had to promise she'd find out before dinner. That same night, when the guy was at his house, he heard his mom arguing with someone on the phone as usual. Nate only stood silently in the hallway and regarded their family picture. "You came?" "I'm sorry. I was on the phone. Mom's freaking out right now," explained the woman as soon as she saw her son. "Hungry? Let's eat. Director Kim will accompany you for a while. And they said life was simple in the DI village," Mother began to tell me. "This place is full of crazy social misfits. High school students don't know how scary the world is," expressed Mrs. Ho's point of view. When they sat down to dinner together, the mother decided to ask her son if he knew that creep, that criminal. "Do you know how surprised your mom was when she found out he was in the same class as you? And at school, he is known for being a troublemaker. But that's not the point. I want to know about the other thing. Jolie. Do you think she and the perpetrator know each other?" Mom suddenly decided to ask. "You told me they wrote explanatory notes together. Mom told you. I didn't like her from the start. We can't have people like that around us," the woman continued to mutter. The woman went on to say that she didn't like Jolie's stupidity at all. "Mom, you know that Jolie is #1 in our school, right? Her ranking is also higher than mine." Her classmate stepped in to defend her. "Being stupid doesn't mean being dumb. She's being stupid because even no matter how much she studies hard, she won't be your level." The woman continued to tell her point of view. "I feel sorry for such an intelligent child. However, she won't be able to feel pity for others. Too heartless," the mother stated, and it was really unpleasant to hear her son say that. The mother then explained that she didn't mind her child's good nature. "I think the higher a person rises, the more they need to know how to help others. But when it comes to associating with a criminal, I, as a mother, can't keep quiet," said Ho. "I've never even had a normal conversation with Bob. Plus, she said they weren't close," Nate told me. "Is that why you called the police station and wanted to find out what the situation was?" The woman interrupted him. "Of course, you're free to ask Director Kim for anything you want, but I'll know about it too," the woman uttered, and then everything fell into place. The employee reported everything to her mother. Through her example, Ho tried to instill in her son that instead of purifying muddy water, it was much easier to protect it from pollution. Nate was so tired of listening to the bickering that he even had to go out for some fresh air. He thought about the fact that Kim had reported everything to his mother, which was obvious since the principal was his mother's man. Since Nate was his mother's son, she would respect, but not obey. Nevertheless, the guy managed to find out information about the incident through her. The beating incident happened last Saturday afternoon in a downtown bar alley. The victim was seriously injured after being struck twice with a weapon. He is currently unconscious. According to the victim's brief statement before he lost consciousness, the perpetrator was wearing black clothes, looked tall and bulky. The police, searching the area, heard from the owner of a hardware store similar information about the person the victim described. "I distinctly remember this guy. After visiting my store, he walked down the hotel alley with a girl in a black cap. Then already I was worried about him. There was a scary atmosphere from him," narrated the store consultant. In this rural town, it wasn't hard to find Bob, who was described with accuracy by the residents. From Bob's picture, the man immediately recognized the bully. He is known to be a troublemaker in nearby schools. I scrutinized this while handling the school violence case, but he ended up in a serious situation, explained the police officer. Bob, who had a run-in with the police at school, offered little resistance. He looked like he was annoyed about being involved in a case like this. Even the cops wised up to the fact that he was probably innocent. The guy's demeanor changed when he was asked a question about what he was doing on Saturday afternoon. Without mentioning the incident, they simply asked him what he was doing on Saturday, but Bob remained silent and said nothing after that. Regardless of the other questions, there was the same reaction. After that, the attitude of the police also changed. "I don't think he's guilty. It's more like something is bothering him and he's not talking about it, right? Anyway, we should have evidence. Let's go back and do a little investigation. The police officers chatted over their smoke break. But it looks like the chief is going to send him straight to juvie. I heard that the victim is the chief's younger brother. The chief hates such scoundrels, but it may not be him. The situation was in many ways unfavorable to Bob. There were no clear witnesses or evidence yet, but the suspicions about him were growing more and more. When Nate thought about the description of it being a Saturday afternoon and the girl in the cap, the guy guessed it was the same day he saw the guys, so he jumped out of the car and chased after them. The neighborhood nearby was definitely an alley with bars, but these two were walking in the opposite direction of the bar, and it didn't look like they were going to split up from the classmates' observations. If Bob had talked about how he met Jolie in detail, the police would have investigated further. But he didn't, because he didn't want people to know who he was with. Nate still didn't understand why they had to keep their relationship so secret. After the guy got some fresh air, he went back to his room to think things over already there. If I testify about that day, the police will listen. I have no relationship with Bob because I'm Ho's son, who knows the direct number of the man above the chief of police. Perfectly understood kid. Despite this, Bob won't go to jail. Even if Nate tells not the police, but Jolie, she'll just go ahead and exonerate him, because Jolie is the one who believes in this guy's innocence the most. But then the newcomer class wondered what if, for whatever reason, Jolie couldn't testify. During this time, the girl kept thinking about the fact that Bob still didn't come home or to school. She hadn't heard anything, and besides, she couldn't even do anything about it since she didn't know the situation. She needed information. In doing so, Jolie recalled the words promises that Nate had said when he wanted to help, but she personally wasn't going to get help from Ho's son. Looking at those eyes, similar to his mother's, she felt an instinctive resistance. As always, she had no one to rely on. She didn't even have a choice but to find out for herself. So she decided to come to Life Safety and Investigations that same day. "Excuse me, I lost my wallet. Hasn't anyone found it? Or can I at least file a missing persons report, because it contains some really important stuff?" The protagonist found the perfect excuse to come in. She said that there wasn't much money in it, but there was a picture of her mom when she was young. The police were very moved by this, so they went to check if anyone had lost the wallet. While the schoolgirl was testifying to the appearance of her missing person, Bob was sitting in a neighboring corner of the same room. That's when they noticed each other and looked over to Jolie. Bob immediately told her to leave. "What? Go away? I was so worried that I came to see this. And you don't even know that I can't even have a proper meal because of you," thought the girl at that moment. Afterwards, the policeman informed the lady who came in that the wallet was missing. He promised to contact the girl later, so he asked her to leave her contact information here. Unexpectedly for the heroine herself, in the same second, the man asked if she knew Bob's apprentice. Was I too careless? Well, it doesn't really matter. I still don't understand why Bob hasn't been released yet, thought Jolie. We're in the same class, I don't know, but he's not the type to beat people up. He's closer to an inept high school kid. She began to recount. But then the man directly asked if she had gone downtown with him on Saturday. Jolie was very surprised to learn that the day of the incident was Saturday. If the incident happened in the afternoon, Bob is definitely not the perpetrator, because Bob was with me that day, pondered Jolie. But why didn't he tell me he was with me? Isn't it because everyone will find out about our relationship? A high school girl thought to herself. The girl just wanted to tell what had happened that day. But immediately Bob started pulling out of the fence and yelling about the girl lying. "Don't listen to her. She's a stalker. I've had enough of you. Enough already. Even coming here? Please get out of here. Damn, what the hell are you doing here, imprisoning this innocent man in a place like this, and not trying to catch the real culprit? I told you it wasn't me. I was in the hotel alley that day, but I didn't beat up nobody," proved the accused. "Why don't you watch what you say? Why are you, who has water in his mouth, all of a sudden so mad?" A member of the department tried to calm him down. "Ah, the motel. You want to know why I went to the motel? Why guys go there? Most of it doesn't have to be reported, does it? An angry Bob continued. The police officers all also tried to calm him down, as this behavior would do him no good. Not to linger too long, the man decided to keep asking Jolie questions about Saturday, but she wittily decided to brush it off. Uncle, I came here to get my wallet, not to answer your questions, she cleverly said. Nevertheless, if anything comes to mind, I'll let you know. Can you give me your number? I'm very good at investigating, but you know what I do better than that. I'm good at keeping secrets. Don't worry, if anything comes to mind, don't contact me immediately, the man asked. Considering the real culprit still hasn't been caught, your words don't sound very plausible. Jolie thought aloud. If my intuition is correct, this girl is the girl the hardware store owner saw. If she was with him, that will be Bob's alibi. The policeman pondered as she started to walk away. If the place they were in is the circumference of a hotel, then I completely understand why they both don't want to reveal it. If he even snapped and went into open anger to defend the girl's honor, I don't think he's a bad guy. After Jolie left the station, already being near the school, the girl realized how wrong her friend had done. That day, they went to the hotel alley and saw her mom at work. Afterward, they were in the house making sandwiches and eating. That's it. However, how many people will believe this real truth? Not only are she and Bob in the abandoned house together every day, and the fact that they went to the hotel alley, the scenarios people will draw are obvious. Unfortunately, they will draw national attention, and the fruits of that attention will not be the most pleasant. Although the protagonist was clear about Bob's thoughts, if the rumor spread, it was unclear if Jolie herself could handle it. She already has a bad reputation, so if it affected her going to university, nothing good would come of it. The same will happen with her high school life. And that house! Once that house is uncovered, the girl can't go back anywhere. If that happens, there will be no more boiling and making soup together, no more fighting. Walking up and down the mountain ramp, helping each other, there will never be that again. Even if there is no alibi, if the perpetrator is caught, he will eventually be released. So we can do without it. That's probably exactly what Bob thought. What if the culprit isn't caught? If Bob gets framed like that because of me, the girl thought. But she was pulled away from her loneliness by Nate, who approached the girl. He asked her not to worry too much about their bully classmate. If he wasn't a criminal, he'd be released soon anyway. Nate began to comfort his friend that Bob wasn't well known. Besides, people can make mistakes impulsively. The boy still sensed from his classmates some distrust of him. I like you, Jolie. I want to know about you. If you're having a hard time, I want to help you. I hope you can count on me, he pronounced at that moment. The girl knew he was interested, but not enough to admit it. So she decided to thank him for it, though she pointed out clearly that Nate couldn't do anything for her. Or rather, she meant that what the rich classmate would do would not be enough. Rather, only his mother would be able to do something, not him. You think your relationship will never change? Even if Bob goes to juvie? Before Jolie left, a guy shouted, "It's not going to happen, because I won't let it happen." Now the girl has clearly decided for herself that everything must be told. The priority is to prove Bob's innocence. Even so, they'll never be able to live like they used to. Never again will they be able to sit so nicely on a Saturday picnic outside their house. At this time, the defendant himself was also pondering the recent events of the week, including the arrival of his close girlfriend at his station. Stupid. Though what's the matter? I do stupid things too sometimes, pretending to be smart. How did she get here? Is today the 5th day since I entered the detention center? Pondered the guy who was lying behind the temporary detention center bars. At first, the thug thought he would be able to get out soon. Even if he didn't have an alibi, he wouldn't be guilty anyway, because he hadn't done anything like that. However, when he came here, the situation was unusual, and it had gotten even worse after the police chief's visit. It was unknown whether it was even possible to lock up a civilian without a warrant. Then Bob guessed that maybe Jolie had already figured it out, which meant she wasn't coming back. Thinking about it that way really calmed him down. Still, already experienced, the neighborhood threat guy was well aware of the nature of rumors. It swells to the size of a house, starting with a cube. And once it gets big enough, then it attracts annoyed looks. The looks of other people of the whole community around it. And no one will care if it's true or not. No matter how careful you are, if your secret leaks out, it will change at other people's discretion. In the end, it's going to be terribly disturbing to the best student at Jolie High. Such was the double life of the protagonist. A high school girl pretending to be a model student, a known troublemaker and a lewd girl, who then checks in and out of the hotel. It was a great field for the ripening of numerous terribly obscene rumors. Of course, all these gossip will affect the girl rather than her roommate Bob, because who cares about the local hooligan? The whole neighborhood, and so clear that he is not the best person, but the excellent girl to discuss is much more interesting. Rather than see it happen, I'd rather eat here for free. It's more comfortable than I thought it would be. There are showers and laundry facilities. Of course, it won't be good if it goes on like this for long, because Jolie might do something stupid again. Trying to think positively, but still remaining realistic, the defendant. Remembering the events that had happened, Bob was well aware that it would have been good that day if he could have held back then. But he would be released soon anyway, so all he had to do was sit and wait. At that moment, the boy remembered something else important. I think I once saw my father say something like that to my mother when I was little. Then my father came back safely. How about me? He thought for a second. To his surprise, he didn't think it over for long. That same day, a police officer of the station approached him and uttered the most long-awaited words of the accused. "Come out. Released. The culprit has been caught. You can come out now." "Boy, it was brutal, of course," said the man. But nevertheless, Bob came out of the temporary detention room very upset and morally depressed, not even hiding his emotions. "What's with that look when you get out? Is it because the criminal was not found quickly?" The man who released him decided to ask. "Boy, you should actually give thanks. If it wasn't for him and your guardian, you wouldn't have gotten out of here so soon." Another man spoke up, but the policeman reassured him that it was nothing. The squad officer also ordered him to start by filing a case report. He releases it. Bob realized at that moment that this was the best time to thank the policeman for his work. The young man bowed and said, "Thank you very much." "That you. The police did their job. I was afraid you'd just break the bars and walk out if we didn't find the culprit as soon as possible. You need to sign this document and you can leave," narrated the uncle. While the boy was signing the paper, the man decided to say his final, mentoring words. "You, my children, are very suitable for each other. From now on, be careful in places like this if you meet." Suddenly, the policeman said, "Don't be so callous. Be nice to your girlfriend." By such words, it was clear that the man had seen Jolie together with Bob. It would seem that already quite mature and healthy policeman at that moment sweetly embarrassed for the guys. She was scary a little bit. "That's why I'm afraid to even say anything about it now. Talk to her yourself. I'll keep it a secret." The man promised. When Bob started to prove that Jolie is not his girlfriend, and she wasn't with him then, the man questioned back why the guy went there then. "Don't worry, I won't say anything. If I open my mouth, it'll be a problem for the prestige of the police," he said finally, and shoved the guy out of the station. After arriving at his house, Bob immediately decided to clean himself up and headed for a shower. Afterwards, he also decided to check his money bag. All the bills were still there. As it turned out, this bag of money had been given to him by his father. "Take it. It's certainly not enough. But stay here for now. It's safer here. I'll pick you up as soon as everything is settled," his bandit dad promised. He left his son at someone's unknown house and didn't even tell them where he was. "There's no need to know," argued the man. No matter how much the guy used the money, It didn't diminish. On the one hand, it was good, but on the other hand, it wasn't very safe. To take his mind off the unpleasant subject, Bob decided at that moment to take out the envelope Helen had handed him. In it was a note, and attached a barrette on it. Perhaps I should have bought one with a bow, but thought she wouldn't wear it because it would be a big attention grabber. So began a letter from the class bully. Jolie often ties her hair up in a hairstyle, but I personally like it better when she's with her hair loose. If she has hairpins like that, she'll let her hair down more, right? Written by a girl who really wanted to help her classmate. Well, that's what I thought and bought. But once she sees me, she's sure to get mad. Hopefully with this I can calm her down. Sincere guy thought, and decided to head to his and Jolie's cabin. Upon arriving there, Bob heard the smell of spoiled food. Wait, does that mean Jolie didn't come here at all? He wondered, looking at his sink, where the food was already rotting. Without thinking for a long time, he decided to start his cleaning. But after a couple of minutes, the door to the house opened. His friend, who had just gotten home from school, was quite angry. As soon as she saw Bob in front of her, she immediately went over to him and began shouting her outrages. "You piece of idiot! Have you no brains? Don't you live without thinking at all? Why are you silent? What would you do if at the end you were accused of a crime without finding the culprit?" Yelled at him by the main character, to which the guy tried to explain that the Korean police are great and the culprit was caught in less than a week. "In a situation like this, you have to tell the truth. I don't mean making things up. Did you think if you told me, I'd take offense to you? You started talking as soon as I got here. You started resenting me, you bastard. At least you got it. I even went there because of you. I went there, but you caused more misunderstanding and kept quiet. Are you completely stupid? Do you think I would have been grateful for my sacrifice?" She continued to be indignant, and in a fit of hysterics, she could no longer hold back her emotions at all. Tears. "It's 3 days until the exam and I haven't studied at all. If I miss first place this time, it's all because of you. I don't need grades in my life except first place, but because of you, I might lose it." Frustratedly, the excellent student continued to assert. Honestly, the guy didn't even think she'd lay the blame on him to this extent, so he realized it was about time to start trying to calm her down at least a little. "Who's going to beat you in this school? Don't worry too much. The original exams are created for those who studied regularly," said the bully. At the attempt to shout his words of reassurance, Bob only quietly decided to wipe away her tears. Jolie's psyche was really running out. How much he pissed off the protagonist at that moment, but she also realized that he was also that much more dear to her. The girl moved closer to press him against her with all her might. She whimpered right into the chest of her closest friend. They stood like that together in a tight embrace for several minutes. Afterwards, they decided to make their favorite soup together. Today's ingredients were egg and tofu. While the girl ate lunch, she thought about her outburst of emotion. "Have I ever cried like this in my life? It's embarrassing, but honestly, it's also kind of refreshing. The policeman told me to just trust him, thinking it wasn't a bluff." Jolie consoled herself. In the morning, at school, the girl was informed by her class teacher that Bob should return to the school building tomorrow. The teacher also asked to stop spreading useless rumors and direct all efforts to study. Soon after, Jolie heard that he was released and ran home in a flash. Of course, the protagonist had no intention of throwing tofu at Bob, but when she saw him standing there with such an innocent face, she couldn't hold back her anger for a moment. Because of the guy, she couldn't study, and she couldn't sleep for days on end. Bob could feel the intense gaze on him from Jolie herself. "If you have something to say, say it. It'll put a hole in my head. Do you have any more loose ends left after that tantrum?" He decided to ask. Then he dropped what he was doing and decided to get closer to his friend. First of all, he decided to ask what the girl was talking about when she met the policeman. She continued to resent him because she was afraid that the bully of their neighborhood might not be allowed out. The culprit would have been caught sooner or later anyway. Don't you know what can happen if what you said goes on the rumor? You didn't have to cover yourself in mud. He explained. And even his assurances that he wouldn't tell anyone weren't absolute. If he did, he'd be a fool in the eyes of the police, and that was what Bob was trying to explain. In any case, Jolie was fine with that opinion. After all, she doesn't care about the mud that others throw. Anyway, Bob was released, and that was the main thing. "You know it's all thanks to me, don't you?" the girl remarked. Jolie, who only knew about studying, took care of me to the point where she couldn't do what she loved. I guess I should at least take a bow and say thank you, pointed the bully at that moment. But then abruptly, Bob asked an unexpected question. "Do you like me?" he asked, which just stunned the little girl. She thought he should like her, not the other way around. After all, a straight A student had saved him. In fact, the guy knew how he felt too. That's why he asked about his friend. Jolie was constantly in his head and thoughts as he falls asleep and wakes up. "If this isn't sympathy, I've lost my mind, it seems," Bob said romantically and sweetly. "Now that I'm done talking, feel free to study as much as you want. I need to get some sleep," said the boy, and headed up to the second floor to bed. "Take first place and put your pride on the line." Bob pointed out last to give even more motivation to his girlfriend. The next morning, they were all ready at the exam. "I think I've studied pretty hard in the past. When will I leave this place? After my father dies? As I continue to not know what kind of life I will live, I wondered if there was any point in studying," thought the man. But strangely enough, now he keeps wondering if he should try again. Most likely, it's because he's seen Jolie focus on her studies every day. Jolie and I have very different paths. Our future together is not going to be bright. But what if Jolie feels the same way? Pondered the guy. Then I don't know about the distant future for sure. I wonder if we can stay together until the near future. If we move forward so little by little, wouldn't it be possible even in the distant future? I had such a silly thought, pondered he. After class, Jolie hooked up with her friend to let him know she was hungry. They began to discuss what they could cook together today. As the girl wanted, she thought it would be a sandwich. Immediately, she started begging for money for their meal, so the guy decided to get a little indignant. "It's only been a few days since I got out of detention. It's good if I don't get eggs thrown at me," he stated. When the girl got up from under the desk, she mentioned again the fact that the guy can't even give the appearance that they don't know each other. That's why they can't date. Well, just as she started to walk away, Bob held her back by taking her hand. They both got embarrassed by this awkward moment. Then the girl said she wanted to eat a sandwich with delicious sweet jam and smiled as she continued to hold his hand. It was cute enough that even a big guy like Bob blushed. When Bob came to, he noticed his freshman classmate walking down the hallway. The boy wondered if Nate had seen it all and if he should catch him and ask him. Well, maybe it's even a good thing if he saw it. It was clear he liked Jolie, I thought, and reassured myself that the class bully was the class bully. But at the same time, the very words from his girlfriend were running through the guy's mind. "You can't even pretend to know me. How are you going to date then?" In fact, it made Bob happy because the great girl had finally stuttered on the subject of dating. "I thought today was going to be a special day," Bob thought. Just like the relationship that started with Jolie earlier, she's focused on her studies more than ever before. I've already heard back from her. Bob thought that since the girl liked sweets, it would be a good idea to buy a cake. He decided that he would have to get the present that was in the cupboard. "She's not going to throw it in my face saying I wasted my money on a freebie, is she? It may be tasteless, but I genuinely tried to choose," says the guy. He thought about such things exactly until he met a familiar black car with dark tinting. It is clear to an armed eye that this is an unusual vehicle. At the same time, a man flew towards him. The uncle started asking the boy if anything was wrong at Bob's. That's when he ordered him to go with him. Had to follow right now, since there was no time. Had to go to the shelter. And Bob knew where it was without even asking. He had anticipated the situation from the moment he saw his uncle. It was then that the uncle pointed out that the lad could take the essentials from his house. But leaving her at home? There's Jolie in the house where I consider him to be. After all, there was no way he could take her with him. There was no way he could go there. And Bob had never even imagined that such a situation could arise. Looking at his uncle's arm, the boy realized that they really didn't have time. The limb was all bloody. Unfortunately, Bob forgot about this problem for a while. His situation is not much different. The guy realized that Jolie would be waiting for him. She usually stays there alone until nighttime, as she thinks her friend will come. No one else can help her down. But Bob had to agree to go along with the man. While they were riding in the car, the uncle informed him that the boy could still come back here again, but only if the man survived. While they were driving, Bob happened to see a familiar face in the window. It was Nate. Then the bully thought that it might be the luckiest meeting at that moment and asked to stop the car for a minute. He might not tell, but there's no other choice. If I could get away with telling her... Bob really did realize that this was his last chance. So the guy asked his classmate to tell the girl that he was sorry for leaving her alone again. Bob begged the newcomer to do so. He couldn't stay with him much longer, so he silently walked away to his car. Bob really hoped that this wasn't the last time he'd see Jolie. But what could those hopes even mean? No one knew if they would ever meet again, and whether it would be to her advantage. Bob is a man who has an extraordinary life. Probably his path will never cross with Jolie, who through sheer strength will rise. Now the bully will no longer be able to spend on her, or boil eggs to her liking. If only he had known a little earlier that the girl loved sweets so much. A little earlier. If only he'd said he really liked her. But now he can no longer influence what happened and explain his feelings.